Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome the officials from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the members of the media, and the members of the listening public to this public hearing of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the Parliament. My name is Bridget Annie Z. George, and I am the chairman of this committee. The Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations, the PAAC, has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs, and to keep Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. This meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's inquiry via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. An examination of the expenditure and internal controls of Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for financial year 2018-2019 is the examination we are about to embark upon. And therefore, I will ask the representatives from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to introduce themselves, followed by the members of the committee. I therefore invite the Commissioner of Police to start the introduction process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Pleasant good afternoon. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are prepared to commence this to deal with the expenditure and internal controls of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service by the Public Administration and Appropriation Committee. We are fully aware of the importance of this, Chairman, and other members of this committee, not just to ensure proper accountability, but also this would assist in the improvement of the administrative, financial aspects of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that will assist us in the performance of our duties. Without much further ado, I would like to introduce the rest of my team. It is a very powerful baton lineup that I've brought with me to be able to deal with all these different matters that I know the questions would be raised. Shall I introduce them over there?
Commissioner, is entirely up to you.
Okay.
You can introduce
Chairman,
your team or you can ask them to introduce themselves.
From my right, my immediate right, my right hand, the Deputy Commissioner of Police Administration, Ms. Ulla Christopher. On her right is the Head Planning Research and Project Implementation, Mrs. Celicia Gomes. As I move to my left, Mr. Sumit Ramrup, he is the Head Administration. On his left, Mrs. Maria Hart, Head Finance, followed by the Director Human Resources, Mr. Samuel Ragudanan, and just behind me, Chairman, and other members of the committee, Mr. Badalu, the Head Information Technology, who is on my left behind me, and just right behind me, Mr. Trevor Bosse, the Head Internal Audit.
And may I invite the members of the committee, starting on my extreme right.
Good afternoon. Wade Mark, member.
Afternoon, Lakram Bodo, Vice Chairman. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Amratan Devnarayan, member.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Duki, member of the committee.
And the committee is ably assisted by its secretary, Ms. Kiba Jacob, and its assistant secretary, Ms. Sharon Samuel, and also one of our research officers, Ms. Alexis. The purpose of this public meeting is to seek further information on the expenditure and internal controls of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for financial year 2018-2019. The committee is desirous of hearing from the Commissioner of Police and his team to discover the challenges being faced and determine possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to assist the TTPS to achieve the efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. The Commissioner of Police will be engaged today in his capacity as the accounting officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Exchequer and Audit Act, Chapter 6901, defines an accounting officer as, and I quote, any person appointed by the Treasury and charged with the duty of accounting for any service in respect of which monies have been appropriated by the Constitution or by the Parliament, or any person to whom issues are made from the Exchequer account, end quote. Essentially, this means that public funds entrusted to the Commissioner's care are properly safeguarded and applied only to the purposes intended by Parliament. I now invite you, Mr. Commissioner, to make a brief opening statement concerning your role and responsibility as Accounting Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Again, my role and function as the Commissioner of Police, obviously it involves this is something that is still fairly new, and it is a learning curve in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service where the degree of accountability lies now with the accounting officer being the Commissioner of Police. The value for it, obviously, it has played a very important part towards us moving forward as quickly as possible to get many of the initiatives, the operational aspects done, and obviously to ensure that the expenditure can be paid as quickly as possible, rather than the previous scenario, whereby because it involved external agencies, it greatly compromised the effectiveness of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So the concept whereby the accounting officer is now the Commissioner of Police, it has greatly assisted the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in the performance of our duties. It also ensures a degree that we are fully aware that the buck stops now with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and we are mandated to adhere to that obligation. What I can say, however, is that the only difficulty that we have encountered is that it becomes very difficult for us to adhere to that obligation if the actual funds would not be delivered to us in the appropriate time. That is beyond that of the accounting officer. The accounting officer, I only kick in only when the funds can be delivered to us. We have, and I know later on when asked, I will be able to explain in a greater depth how it has greatly affected the performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and it is hoped that through this, it can assist us, because if it is that we can actually get what is required, based not on some asking for something outside of what was requested, approved in Parliament, but the fact is, unless the funds are made available to us, most of the things that we would discuss would be affected, and it is difficult for us to adhere to our obligation unless it is we actually get what is required to us in the appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So I guess maybe we'll start the conversation based on the submissions that were made. And in terms of your position as accounting officer, you had indicated that you place great reliance on your internal audit unit and your monitoring and evaluation compliance unit to be able to assist you in maintaining control as accounting officer. And just to give us some context, I would like to ask the size and composition of your internal audit unit and your monitoring and evaluation compliance unit.
That unit is actually just below the Office of the Commissioner of Police on the 5th floor. Mm-hmm. An individual who heads that unit, she has a staff of 9, and they're involved in a variety of aspects, as we will see later on, to deal with the different elements to ensure output and outcomes. There's a system that they have to measure that performance. We meet with them. I meet with mostly the head on a regular basis to verify exactly what it is that's required. Was it?
Monitoring evaluation is 5 and
oh, right, sorry. Yes, the monitoring and evaluation is comprise 5 persons, and the internal audit, that unit will comprise 10 individuals.
Thank you, Commissioner. So that's what I wanted to be clear of, that there were 2 separate units. Are they both headed by the same person or different persons?
No, Chairman, two different persons. Yes.
All right, thank you very much. In terms of this, while you've established that these 2 units comprising, I think, about 15 people, are really the backbone by which you measure outcomes, evaluate performance, demonstrate value for money. On the other hand, you tell us that these units need strengthening and restructuring to service the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And I glean from that there is some sort of, I don't want to use the word dissatisfaction, but maybe deficiency in them meeting what is required of them. So I wanted to ask what was involved in strengthening and the restructuring of these units.
Yeah. Chairman, yes. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even though you have a unit with these individuals, and on most occasions they will be involved in the administrative aspects of measuring be used as a yardstick to verify that we're getting value for our dollar. But when you look at the situation in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have 77 stations. That alone, that by itself, is going to be something that is very difficult to ensure that a unit with 15 persons in the police headquarters or the police admin building can ensure that everything that is required, we are ensuring that there's proper accountability and persons are adhering to their obligations. Mm-hmm. So it means that what we have to do is, in the restructuring, it may not necessarily mean expanding the personnel, but to try to find avenues to ensure that we can have more systems for better accountability and to measure performance throughout the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So, for example, the items and tools that are used in each station to ensure that persons are made accountable to verify that the items are not being abused, it is being utilized in the right manner, and it can be more effective. And we can actually look at the concept of vehicles as an example. We have thousands of vehicles. We have seen the situation years gone by where there have been a situation with vehicles becoming unserviceable, being damaged based on, at times, ineffective preventative maintenance and also the way that vehicles may have been driven. But to just ask that monitoring and evaluation unit to ensure that this is done, it is much more than that. So it means that we have to put other systems, which is what we are doing now, a GPS tracking on these vehicles. And all of these things now can be fed back to that engine room of that evaluation unit so that they will be able to monitor. And again, most of the individuals here, they have their own checks and balances to work in tandem with that unit to ensure that what is being adhered to, that is being actually adhered to throughout the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
So in terms of when you indicated, look, there are 77 stations. For example, you have 5 persons in monitoring and evaluation. You have 10 people in internal audit. I expect that there's some sort of organizational structure of these units. Are there any vacancies within either of the units?
No, Chairman, there isn't any at this time because that is the establishment, that is the structure. I would not want to go into the realm of trying for us to expand as such. What I am putting more emphasis on is to ensure that each and every officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they will adhere to their own responsibility. So I'm trying to deal with the actual foundation of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So they must just be the individuals to ensure checks and balances to all of the persons actually adhering to their obligation. And it involves, and again, when we go back to the expenses, they will now just be able to streamline what is required. So, I mean, even though we speak about the 77 police stations, it is so much more than that. It involves uniform, it involves equipment, it involves the abuse of probably electricity. So all of that, they will then be able to work by looking at costs and then verify if something is being abused, if it is that is being wasted. So it is not so much of us needing to expand the units to some extent to have them actually be on the ground at the stations. What I'm trying to do as much as possible is to ensure that every cent spent by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we get value for our dollar. And what I'm trying to do, obviously, is to reduce expenses whilst not affecting productivity.
Okay, so how you do that? Because on the one hand, I get the impression that internal audit, monitoring, evaluation are supposed to assist. I get the impression from what you say is that they have a very wide span based on the areas under their remit. So then how do you ensure that every person does what they do in the context that you've set out? So one, I get the impression that look, the present configuration can't do it all, and therefore you still have to rely on them to ensure that all these things are complied with. But on the other hand, you're saying, look, every person has to do what they're supposed to do. How you marry those two?
Yeah, Chairman, correct. In the transformation process of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, in that modernization aspect, that is what it is that we are doing. We are adhering to 4 principles, that of better leadership, better management, but the other 2 has to do with measurement of performance and accountability. And by ensuring that we use that now through the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, what we are doing is to mandate that there's those two of those last 4 principles, measurement of performance and accountability, we can now use that to enforce mandatory requirements in as many things as possible. And that is going to greatly diminish costs. So, for example, we can, I just give you an example, overtime. Because of how we are restructuring the process, it is going to ensure that there's not an abuse of the system where we spend roughly $33 million per month on overtime. Now, instead of trying to take an evaluation committee to deal with it, what I do is to delegate responsibility, whereas before, persons will just apply for overtime. Now there's a system where the divisional commanders, you now become accountable. You have a quota, and you have to adhere to it. He now has to send it down to several of his station commanders. The station commander now has to adhere to his limit in overtime. So by me now looking at the previous ratio of overtime, which would have been, as I said, 33 million a month, we might very well cut it to 25 million a month. And by doing that, we can actually look to save $100 million per annum in overtime whilst not affecting productivity, because we did see that there were situations that overtime was being abused and not being used in the right manner. So things like that now, the evaluation committee and also head of finance and other relevant heads will now look at these systems to ensure that we are getting value for a dollar, and by having that degree of accountability by other officers. Likewise with police vehicles, ensuring that the vehicles are not being abused. We had 500 police vehicles that we have lost over the last 3 years based on some degree poor preventative maintenance, but more so just irregular, improper driving practices. Now, for example, the evaluation committee, they're not supposed to be checking on all of these things. Now, division commanders, persons are accountable. Police officers previously would have written of the 500 vehicles that we have lost, not one officer was ever culpable. So now by putting systems to ensure police officers are aware that you can be culpable, you cannot just use an excuse that you're on a distress call. We have GPS tracking on the police vehicle. We can now measure the the speed that the police vehicle was going at prior to impact. And by doing that, we can then say, well, why were you going 100 kilometers per hour? And we have checked in our operational command center, and you were actually not, there was no distress call. He now becomes accountable. These things will all help in the monitoring unit now, because now they will be able to streamline it, pinpoint who is actually not adhering to their duty, rather than them actually going on the ground to be able to micromanage the situations.
Thank you. And I just want to ask one more question before I open this up to our members. You keep talking about restructuring. How long is this restructuring of the service and the processes likely to take place? I guess you have some sort of time frame.
We have already started that, Chairman. Based on what I acquired from the manpower audit, which on Ms. Ella Christopher, Deputy Commissioner of Police, she was part of that manpower audit. We were able to extract the quick wins in that manpower audit. The manpower audit comprised 600 odd pages. What I was able to do is to look at exactly what it is that was required for us to involve in that whole restructuring process. That is already, we have already presented that to the Minister of National Security, so that we are just waiting on the requisite approval. But so in that whole aspect of the restructuring, it is also to ensure there were several hundred police officers that were actually stationed in here working with us in administrative departments. And what we're trying to do now is to get police officers to go out and do policing. So rather than try to increase manpower strength, previously there was a virtual duplication of effort where police officers will be doing almost the identical thing as other persons who held administrative, financial, logistic, human resource duties. So this now will assist us in, again, reducing costs. And likewise, in the restructuring process, we have seen, Chairman, again, what I'm trying to do as much as possible is to reduce costs while it's not affecting productivity. We have 77, I mentioned, 77 police stations to deal with the security and safety of 1.3 million citizens. I could give an example of New York City, for example, where they have just about 71 police stations to secure almost 13 million. Now, again, it's chalk and cheese. At times we have to look at the urban environment and so forth. But my point being is that we are police station heavy? And by doing that, by us having 77 police stations, it means that I have to man 77 stations, and over 2,300 police officers, we have lost them based on them holding positions in administrative, clerical duties, and also guarding police stations. So in that whole restructuring process, it has already been dealt with. Everything that I've spoken about is just a drop in the bucket. It was a comprehensive document, but we are ready to implement it immediately. We are just waiting on the requisite approval.
And in terms of, on the other hand, you're saying, look, we have other measures which we intend to implement to evaluate how we are performing. And one of the aspects I found quite interesting is your crime and victimization survey and your public satisfaction survey. Has that started at all as yet, either of them?
No, Chairman, no, we have not as yet. No.
Do you have any time frame when that will begin?
I'm actually waiting until, because in the restructuring process, it actually involves several other new units that will be in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So we are hoping that as soon as the establishment is approved for the restructuring of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because there are other units as well, domestic violence unit, a cold case unit, special operation response team. So several other units. We are just waiting for the requisite approval. When that happens, then we'll kick into that.
Okay, so these surveys are also part of that whole restructuring, which is to come and awaiting approval from the ministry.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, welcome again, and I take the opportunity to congratulate you on your recent appointment and to wish you all the best in what I'm sure is a very challenging job. Commissioner, I just want to draw your attention to the submission on page 15 with regards to training. And that speaks of the allocation of $1.5 million, an increase of $500,000 over 2018. Are we on the same page? Right. I just wanted some clarification with regards to, is that the amount available for training of civilian staff and police officers?
Yes, it is. If I can expand?
Sure.
And again, this is one of the things that I am looking to greatly reduce expenditure on several aspects because I have never, this will be my first rodeo coming into 1920. That will be the first budget that I will be assisting in seeking requisite approval. When I became Commissioner of Police, this was already done. I was greatly disturbed by the budget itself, the budget allocation when it pertains to training. The cost that we are seeing here, and I try to avoid speaking about when I wore green to when I wear blue, but when I was in another place, not Parliament, but in the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, in another place when I attended, which was arguably one of the better training academies in the world, military, which was the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, the cost to the taxpayers to ensure my training there is actually more than the training that is provided for 7,000 members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And I think it is very unfortunate that we expect the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to protect and serve with pride and to deliver when you provide something of training with that magnitude, which is virtually insignificant, and you expect our police officers to move forward. We certainly cannot improve the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service if we just focus no further north than Charlottesville and Tobago. We got to expand. We got to move further north. We have to head further east towards Europe, North America. and to get as many officers as possible to get that exposure, to get that training, to understand the improvement of technology, the improvement of systems that have been used to improve policing worldwide. Or it is difficult for us to improve that capability and that capacity if it is that we have a budget or something like this. But again, this is not a sales pitch where I am trying to, as much as possible, to keep what the budget allocation, but it's a matter of diminishing certain things, but greatly increasing this. That 1.5 million cannot, in any form or fashion, assist. When we look at the different units in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the special branch, for example, several should be on a course for several months on an annual basis because of the increase of dealing with counterterrorism, dealing with other elements of systems to ensure the better protection and well-being, not just of persons who hold office here in Trinidad and Tobago, but when we have to deal with foreign dignitaries who enter Trinidad and Tobago, with the improvement and the difference in DNA testing, forensic testing, fraud, cybercrime, all of these different things, it increases on an annual basis. So it means that we need to get our officers out there being properly trained and having that capacity to ensure that those different units I spoke about, which is just that's just one element, to ensure that that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the officers can be deemed the Trinidad and Tobago's finest.
Commissioner, so I hear you, and I'm glad that we share the same interest in terms of the importance of training, but I also wanted to take you to the second page, the page after that, page 16, and to look at some of the areas that are of concern to members of this committee and to the public at large. For example, dealing with difficult people, conflict resolution, customer service, domestic violence, and so on. Several times you would hear about incidents in the newspaper and the public domain where, for example, those who are mentally ill may not be dealt with properly as far as the public is concerned. And even those who are victims of domestic violence and so on sometimes complain that the police may not be sensitive enough or skilled enough in how they are dealt with. So my question is, in terms of the allocation that you have, are there any specific training programs planned during this financial year to deal specifically with those issues?
Yes, so more important than that, again, with the 1.5 million, what I spoke about at length previously, that involved international training based on best practice and things that can increase the capability for our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that we are not utilizing at this time. The things that you spoke about here, that does not require a great degree of international support. Those things can be dealt with internally because they are indeed very good organizations, institutions that can assist us in many of these departments. We do have that capability, but what I would like to add just to assist in improving this, it is not so much of the training, but it has to do again with the restructuring. I will give an example dealing with specifically what you spoke about, domestic violence. We have signed a memorandum of understanding with NYPD to assist us in that element of domestic violence. And there's now, in the restructuring, we have now formed a domestic violence unit dealing specifically with this. We have seen, for example, situations where, and reports, you rightly stated, so it cannot be denied, of persons complaining based on domestic violence, male and female, that they go to the police stations and sometimes they feel that they are not the victim, but the perpetrator. And with that now, it will cause a degree of persons being reluctant to go to the station, and then how it is dealt with at, like for example, in other countries, immediately if there's a situation, the victim remains at the home. We do just the opposite at times. Likewise, you have the concerns of the improper and ineffective use of enforcing restraining orders that is actually given. So by the domestic violence unit, what is being done, we are going to turn this around to the committee. No longer would persons be asked to go to a police station based on you have a concern of domestic violence. Through the 999 system, which has also been totally revamped, you have an issue, those specifically trained individuals will now come to you, to your home. So you do not have to go to a police station. So rather than, again, this comes with saving costs. Rather than me having to train 6,000 plus police officers to understand the sensitive nature of how you have to deal with someone after they have been physically abused, the cost of that is astronomical. You now specify just 4 or 5 persons in every division in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I looked at the ratio of how often these reports take place. By doing that now, those individuals who are properly trained will now come directly to your home immediately. And what I can say based on my research, well, working with the NYPD, they have stated by having specialized persons there, it is going to drastically increase the reports of domestic violence, because now persons will feel more comfortable by reporting it. So there's going to be a spike. It is going to drastically increase, and then it will start to dip, because the dipping will then take place by persons realizing there are no consequences. You can now be made accountable for it. So by this, again, I'm just waiting on the approval. This domestic violence unit works in tandem with other units that will be under the ACP. It involves cold case unit, victim and witness support unit, help me, what else? School services unit, and the child protection unit. So all of these units now will be under one umbrella of one assistant commissioner of police. And by doing that now, it is streamlined to ensure it is very sensitive. The information is confidential. It is not a case of persons being concerned that your photo, which we have seen reports being made, a screenshot taking place on a station diary being sent to the public, or somebody may very well be aware of who the person, who is the wife or the husband of the individual, sending back information. So by doing this, it is going to, there's no need to increase expenditure in matters like this. What we are doing is to have better effectiveness in the management of such units.
Commissioner, I want to commend the TTPS on that initiative, but you mentioned two things. One is that you're awaiting approval. Can you indicate who would need to approve that initiative?
Well, this basically through Cabinet. It has been submitted to the Minister of National Security, so I'm just waiting on Cabinet's approval for this.
Commissioner, I just wanted, I don't want to leave the issue of customer service so easily. The question I want to ask you is, are you satisfied that your officers who interact with the public on a daily and regular basis are sufficiently trained in terms of how they interact with the public? Because one of the commonest complaints you hear is that you don't have courteous interactions either in the public space or in police stations when citizens go to make reports and so on. And I know that I see that you're speaking about people-centered policing and you want to engage the communities and so on, which is very important for that kind of interaction. So are you satisfied at this point in time with the training and the ability of your officers to interact with the public? Are you satisfied with that?
Yes, so over the last few months, I would like to say that we are very satisfied, but we have a very long way far way to go. The fact, I'll give you an example. Yesterday on a letter to the editor from the Express, there was a letter that it had an elderly person, and throughout her whole system, from her car breaking down to her being escorted somewhere, there's a change. There's a degree of hope. And what I picked up as the Commissioner of Police is, we put a lot of emphasis on crime reduction. And yes, we can say that there's a 15% decrease in homicide in comparison to the same period last year. And there's a 20% plus a reduction in violent crime. But that has to do with statistic. The public has a right, and what we are doing now is ensuring that the public adheres to that right. And it's not a right just of safety and security, a right of respect. The respect and the Tobago Police Service, what most of us are trying to do. I can't put my head on a block for every police officer. You can't. But what we have seen, you would have seen it for Carnival, you would have seen it from the reports. There's a turn where police officers are saying to themselves, listen, we are aware that we are the employees and you are the employers. And when I say you, I mean the citizens. We work for each and every citizen. And with that now, the arrogance, the obnoxious behavior, the high-handedness of police officers stopping you in a roadblock, their hands in their pocket, they're shouting at you, that is changing. You're seeing much less of that. And because of that, it becomes a positive domino effect, whereby the citizens now, they feel good about seeing police officers in a roadblock. There's a casual conversation, and there's things that we are doing from when it is not, we are now giving them tickets for being good, for their performance of their duty. And by going along on that manner, what we are doing is transforming the mindset of the public. Now, you would have seen recently the I Support Our Service. That has played a very big part towards bridging that gap between the public and the police service. Working together, getting the public to work with us, trust us, believe in us, give us that opportunity. And the police officers now, they are now operating in a much better manner. And we have not yet started on the focus, which we intend to do in the next fiscal year because it wasn't budgeted, the actual training in customer service. So we haven't started the concept of the training, but it is already there. You're seeing and you're feeling it. So through the elements of I support our service, through street talk, many things that we're dealing with the communities, it is not cosmetic. It really has to do with police officers now feeling good and knowing that they have an obligation to duty and to serve the public with pride.
Commissioner, in some jurisdictions, there's something like a citizen's charter where the citizens write in terms of their interaction with the police. Is a document, almost a legal document. Do we have something like that in Trinidad, or if not, are we on the way? What are your thoughts on that in terms of having that available to the citizens of the?
Yes. You mean indirectly for the citizens themselves?
Yes.
With the police officers?
Yes.
No, we don't, sir. But what I do have.
For example, I'll just give you an example. For example, in the health sector, in some places, patients have what you call the patient's rights or charter. So they are guaranteed certain rights in terms of an interaction with the police. So we don't have anything like that in Trinidad.
The closest that we have, which again, it shouldn't reach a point of a carrot and stick, but what we have as close as possible is the police complaint authority, where it is that if it is that you feel that a police officer has not adhered to his or her obligation as a police officer and they have abused their authority, you have an avenue of recourse by going to the police complaint authority. But that is the stick method. So what we are pushing much more is the carrot method, where it is that we do have a contract. There's a new contract now between the police service and the public. And that unwritten contract is one whereby the public is stating that, listen, I know that you are here to serve me, you are here to adhere to my responsibility of safety and security. And I will provide you with the respect that you have. So when it is that we are stopped or whatever, I will respect and adhere to what it is you have to say. But you need to respect me and understand that you work for me. And that's the contract for the citizen. The police officer, we are now saying, we are aware of our obligation now. We are here to serve you with pride. We are here as the employees. We are here to make life better for you. All that we are asking is that you also treat us with a degree of respect and do not see us as the enemy and work with us. And by doing that unwritten contract, there's not a need for any type of a documentation.
Well, Commissioner, I'm happy to hear that, but I'm not sure, and I would want you to perhaps give consideration because sometimes in some jurisdictions where you have a formal contract, not necessarily law, something that can be taken to court and so on, but it does give some assurance to citizens and police officers in terms of guiding the interaction. Before I hand on to another member, Commissioner, I just want to clarify something with regards to information that the committee would have pulled from the TTPS website, and that is regards to the divisions, branches, squads, and units of the TTPS. And the information on your website is that there are 9 divisions, which I'm taking as correct, but it's listed as 18 branches, squads, and units. And then there are several branches and squads and so on listed. But when we add those numbers up, it comes up to 28. So it's just for a matter of clarity, whether it is an error on the website or whether we're not interpreting this correctly. I don't know if you can assist us with that as we go forward. Yeah, it's on. But I'll have to read, because it would have been pulled up by the Parliament staff from the TTPS website. And for example, it refers to the anti-kidnapping squad, community police secretariat, court and branch process, and so on. But the website says 18 branches, squads, and units, and we are counting about 28 when we go straight down the list, Special Reserve Police, Stolen Vehicle Squad, and so on. Yeah, Interpol. Is there some reason as to why there is that discrepancy?
Chairman, I'm not too sure. I'll have to check to verify whether there's something that is incorrect on the site itself. Yeah. Going back to your first point, what we would do, again, through the research committee, we'll look at best practice in other countries to see how it can and what can be done to ensure, I understand, but it is more of a policy, rather than a framework to ensure a better working relationship, and we adhere to our obligation. So we will do that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Member Duki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, you answered a question posed by Mr. Bodo concerning the interaction with officers and the public and the improvement that you are seeing in terms of that softer element of personal or interpersonal relationship. Specifically, how is that being measured to know that, in fact, the direction in which you want to go with that is actually happening? How is that measured?
there's several at this time. We put systems to measure performance through our communication unit, through evaluation unit, and so forth. We have actually seen it, and again, you use arms from publication, social media. You will see it. You will get the feedback again from letters to the editor. And so there are many things. So the good that you will get from social media, you will also get to see how the direction you're going. And that again, the social media unit is also another unit that we have now implemented as well to work in tandem with the cybercrime unit. So the feedback that we've been getting is based on what we are picking up from the country, based on what you'll get from different arms of communication.
So you are seeing increased positive publicity regarding that. And what role is the planning, research, and more in the context of research is playing in terms of actually measuring that, so that, I mean, while you may look at things from a generic perspective and say that we are seeing improvement, is it actually being measured scientifically from the context of research?
No, definitely not from that planning research. That this element we are speaking about has to do with actual. Once it comes to the operational effectiveness of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the planning research, they will not be involved in those elements per se. So again, we do, and again, looking at the reports that we have been getting constantly, the reports it will come to the Commissioner of Police and the Police Complaint Authority of police officers that would not adhere to their obligation. The numbers, I do not have it here offhand, but there's been a drastic reduction in reports by the public of abuse by police officers in the performance of their duty.
And therefore you're saying that is a measurement criteria based on the reduction in reports?
Yes, sir, but at times, sometimes numbers could give a false impression, so we can actually have that, but it may also have meant that persons are still being abused by police officers, but they have not been reporting it. So it goes both ways.
And that is why I highlighted the issue of measurement. If I can just ask another question, Madam Chair. And again, Mr. Commissioner, you would have answered questions regarding your staff complement in the function of monitoring and evaluation and the internal audit function. And you seem, from my interpretation, to be pretty okay with your complement. But in terms of the required skill set of the complement, are you satisfied that the skill set required to improve or to deliver the level of performance you want in that department reside in those particular departments?
You mean the present status quo? Sir?
Yes. Yeah. In terms of the required skill set, are you happy with?
After we do the restructuring process and it has been approved, it may very well be that we may need to incorporate other elements in that evaluation unit to ensure that we can look at other avenues. But it's not a case of me wanting to expand it to such a strength where you might not get value.
Not in terms of numbers, but in terms of the skill requirement of the staff.
Yes, sir. You do.
Okay. And finally, Madam Chair, quite a bit was said about training. And in your submission, there was some level of emphasis on measuring the effectiveness of the training programs that are being used. My question is not specific to the effectiveness of the training program, but how are you measuring the impact the training is having on the performance outcome of the trainees? So you may have a lot of good training programs. The programs may be perfect, but the result in terms of the performance outcome you're looking at from the trainees may not be realized. So how are you measuring that particular outcome?
Okay. What I do know, the present concept for the recruit training that we have, sir, it is very good. It is on par with many other police department services worldwide. So we can measure the performance of police officers up to the recruit training capability. They come out and they have the capability to perform and perform well. There are certain things that we do need to amend, which has to do with the polygraph testing and so forth. But there is a definite need for increased training capacity after recruit training to continue to monitor the individuals. I'll give you quick examples. I think it is very unfortunate that it has never been mandatory that every police officer should go on a range at least once per annum to use a firearm. Now, that has never been enforced, and by doing that, that will cause the domino effect of negligent discharges, stoppages, or ineffective fire. I am not going to speak about one shot, one kill, but the fact of the matter is that police officers must know how it is to use a firearm. That is their most important and lethal weapon. They have to know when to use it, how to use it. If it is that a police officer, so the concept of what we are doing again with evaluation is to ensure that every police officer from this fiscal year is that every police officer, well, the next fiscal year, I should say, must go on a range at least once per annum to ensure that they know exactly how to use the weapon and to have an effective shot, and to know how it is to have the weapon properly clean, and this will reduce negligent discharges. Other elements to ensure mandatory drug testing and polygraph testing, but also the improvement in training policies. So just as you said, so you're quite correct. If it is that you don't have those systems to have proper training facilities for individuals in the different fields that we have in the police service, it is not just about going on a patrol. There are many aspects of policing that you must have improvement in training. The customer service training, Chairman and others you spoke about, it is very critical. We have never put emphasis on customer service training. There's a specific period in the recruit training that it is done, but there's nothing mandatory after for the police officers. So sometimes we have police officers after 10 years, there's nothing that can mandate that they have gone on a range, that they've been constantly evaluated to ensure that they are trained in customer service training, that they are fully trained in understanding the minimum use of force policy, how it is that they're supposed to deal in a roadblock, a search, an operation, how they must interact with the public in knowing that it is mandatory to show your identification card, knowing that the police complaint authority, if they come to a police station, you are obligated to provide information. All of this is part of continuous training.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Member Dionarine.
Good afternoon. So I just want to build a little bit on what Member Duki was asking. And I immediately recall in your opening remarks, you established that there are 4 criteria by which you are trying to establish better accountability and transparency, which is leadership management, performance measurement, and, well, accountability, right? Now, in terms of the performance measurement, and I believe this is where Member Duki was going, he was asking about the outputs and so on. Are there clear outputs or targets that are established and documented and that are being monitored on over a period of time to see how those targets are being met?
Is it pertaining to a specific officer or the service itself? I just want to clarify.
Both.
We do have performance management systems. Now, the performance management systems ensure that police officers, they are accountable and they have to adhere to certain criteria. However, things have changed where I'll give you an example. If a division, because we brought in the concept of CommStat, comparative statistics, 1 week you will have a situation whereby 50 vehicles will be wrecked. The next week there will be 48. And then previously police officers may then be pointed at, well, you're not doing your job, or 50, but it may very well be that citizens are adhering to their obligation. So at times you can't just use numbers to automatically state that police officers are not performing. At the end there will be an up and down in that XY axis. So we have to look at all different elements to realize that, for example, if there's a reduction in DUI, it's not that the police officers are not adhering to their obligation, it means that the citizens are not adhering to their obligation. So in policing, it is very difficult just to look at, whereas in a business, you just look, at most occasions, you look at success based on profit. But in the police service, we can't just look at how many speeding tickets you get, DUI, wrecking. And I've just given that as an example. So in measurement of performance, it depends on what the category is to verify. What it is we would look for different police divisions, look at from the police complaint authority the number of persons that have been reported to verify if there's a situation in a division pertaining to police officers not adhering to their obligation. Reports of police officers involved in in questionable activity. Police officers may be abusing their authority, not their authority, the opportunity through overtime, suspension, sick leave. So with all of these things, there are systems. As it comes to the service itself, going back to sick leave, suspension, for example, we have 300 police officers that are on suspension. That, again, goes back to a concern of costs. It's over $50 million per annum that the taxpayers have. We are not getting productivity based on 300 officers being on suspension. Most of these officers, there's never been a timeline for the suspension. It is unfair to everyone, the citizens, the police service, and the officers themselves, because you are being suspended indefinitely, you're being paid. Some of them are very pleased with it, they're working elsewhere, some of them have migrated. And it is because of a fear factor, going back, ma'am, to what you spoke about, making sure there are systems for accountability and measuring performance. If you're suspending a police officer, put them before the tribunal, put a system to ensure that, listen, you are suspended for X amount of time and not indefinitely. And by putting systems like that, it is going to reduce costs, it is going to improve productivity. And again, this is just a simple example of how it is that we deal with performance management system. What is it?
Operating plan and the half-yearly report.
Yeah, and there's also we have an operating plan, which we can also provide to you, and the half-yearly report.
Thank you, Commissioner, because I was just going to interject to say that if you could share with us the annual operating plan,
yes,
and your half-yearly reports, that may assist in the questioning that we're trying to pursue. Okay? Member Duran.
With respect to the technological capabilities of the IT department, to what extent is IT or technology being used at present in terms of detecting crime and facilitating criminal investigations?
It is very, very heavy. What we are actually doing, again, these things, it's cost-benefit analysis, but the improvement of technology, you're actually seeing it now. It played a very big part towards the perception that this was arguably one of the safest carnivals ever, because we were putting through the GPS on all these police vehicles. This is a simple example. The emergency response patrols, whereas before police vehicles will go out on a patrol. Through the use of technology, we can now verify where each vehicle is. We can look at the speed of the vehicle. We can ensure they stay in the area of responsibility. So now there's a degree of accountability and consequences. So by doing that now, we can have a better system for higher visibility, a rapid response, and a heavy deterrent. And this is a simple example of technology. The use of a live feed of the dashboard cameras on the police vehicles being fed back to the operational command center in real time. That is again through the use of technology. The concept again for us to deal with, there's a restructuring of the cybercrime unit, cybercrime and the social media unit. Again, through technology, we can monitor certain things online through social media. We can pick up patterns. We can look at what criminal elements may be planning to do. We can, again, there are other elements of technology that I can easily tell you, but unfortunately, because of security systems, it will be inappropriate for me to say much more. My IT, anything you'd like to say in particular?
Well, I mean, at all stations, we are able to access our criminal database. Also, we have expanded quite a bit with our fingerprint database and the use of English fingerprint in certain stations, and we look to continue in that as funds are made available to us.
And for me, and again, there are several other things that would be very soon that you'll be seeing through the use of drones. The drones itself can actually play a very big part towards securing our border at a much cheaper cost than helicopters. It is not to replace helicopters, but it can turn night into day. It can have information fed in real time. It can monitor probably if a matchstick enters our waters illegally, being fed back to an operational command center to ensure you get real-time video footage. Again, with the E999, that is also being restructured. And with that now, through any distress call, we can now pinpoint in the operational command center exactly where that call is, look at the emergency response vehicles in closest proximity to that distress call. And with that, you're no longer going to have a problem now of persons being put on a call in 999, being put on hold for half an hour, and then being sent to a police station where you're being told that there are no vehicles available. Because through technology, we are seeing where the distress call is, we're seeing where the vehicles will be. You will now get a response in seconds with a maximum of 3 to 5 minutes on most occasions.
Yeah, thank you. Member Dookie, I'll just allow you one follow-up question, and then I call Member Bodo, and then I'll call on Member Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, with regards to the technology, are we going to be in a position soon where the officers will have laptops like in some of the foreign jurisdictions in the vehicles to be able to access real-time information when they make a stop? Or?
Yes, that is already in place. We have not actually stated it in public as yet. We started it just before Carnival, where there are the notepads on a few of these vehicles in tandem with the live dashboard cams. And with the notepad, yes, my apologies, I did actually, that there are several different things with technology we have actually used that we have not actually spoken about. But what it's going to do, so it is now through the 999 call. With the 999 call, it is now going to be fed straight to the dashboard of the vehicle. And the value of this, it ensures that the police officer, prior to his arrival, he can actually know at that home, the status of that home, if there have been several reports of domestic violence, if the individual has a firearm, if there have been previous reports about that individual. So the concept of technology for that is actually in the vehicles, and it'll play a very big part towards information being fed, because the officers need to know exactly what it is that he's actually coming to his attention. There's also the system of online reporting. May I take this opportunity to also add that, again, because of the interaction we have with our international allies, London Metropolitan Police, again, through the assistance of the British High Commission, they have reached a point, again, where there's a less opportunity for citizens to go to police stations. It is now a delivery service. So what citizens do now, which is what we are trying to do, and it would be achieved, you have a concern, you call 999, and we come to you. If it is you need to report a crime, you do not need to go to a police station. What you do is now online reporting. This hopefully in the next, again, I'm liaising with the IT on it. So we will now have online reporting rather than you having to go to a police station to report. So through the online reporting, it will now be filtered to whether it is fraud, cybercrime, domestic violence, whatever. And then with that now, you have the specialists that will then come to your home. So and again, this will now cause the opportunity of the less need for police stations and to now have more police officers out doing policing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you indicate to us the costs that might be involved in this and how this equipment was procured, the process?
There's
the notepads and the laptops.
Mr. Badlu will clarify.
We have had online reporting for a while, except that it was more primitive. We were actually improving it, upgrading it to exactly what the Commissioner is talking about, where we're able to define exactly which group it goes to automatically. The cost of that, it's really minimal because of the fact it's an upgrade of what we have, and it's more a better feel for the person for the public.
It's the online reporting, but I'm speaking about the laptops, the notepads that are in the vehicles.
Oh, the costing for those, we'd have to get back to you on that. But we are actually, that has been, we've also have, beside what the Commissioner spoke about on those vehicles, we also have some of the other officers that when they do stop and search, they also have the laptops with them. The cost for that we used regular laptops for some of those, right? The tablets in the vehicles, there are various types, so they're different costing. So we have to get back at that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Member Mark?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And once again, welcome Commissioner and the team from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. You know, these days, we are in an economic and financial crunch in terms of resources. So I was very interested when you raised the matter of the 300 police officers who are on suspension, costing the taxpayers $50 million, I think you said a month. Per annum, rather. Could you share with this committee how long these officers have been on suspension, one, And could you also tell us, maybe over a period of 5 or 8 years, what would have been the accumulated value to the taxpayers? And thirdly, what new systems are we contemplating that would be fair to both the officers who have been suspended, to the police service, and to the national community? That is the third question.
Yes, sir. The 300 odd police officers, some have been on suspension for over a decade. So over the 10 years, they've been on suspension indefinitely. Now, at times there's a catch-22 to this in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, where we have many police officers who may be on a charge. Now, if you're already on a charge, again, the Commissioner of Police, apart from being the accounting officer, he has the authorization to hire and to fire. However, based on due process, at times it becomes very difficult if there's a charge pending that you should immediately have him removed from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So he may be placed on suspension. So, but that's a very small amount. But even so, based on affecting the image of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you can actually through a tribunal, you have that board and setting it up. You have to give the opportunity of that individual. So he may even be in prison, because we do have police officers who are actually in prison at this time, but they are still registered. They are members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I think apart from those, there are many others that, because there's a difference with intelligence and evidence, intelligence can give the police service the concern that a police officer should not be in the police service because he can be a breach to national security. So you can suspend him. So, but you cannot fire him, because that same officer now could probably take you to court and show me the evidence that you have fired me. So this is where it is. It becomes a little difficult. What we are doing now is that I am looking at each and every element, because it's a different scenario for a different officer. Some of them we have already confirmed. Some of these officers have migrated. Several of them are working elsewhere and getting double salary. So my intention is for those who have been suspended indefinitely, we need to verify whether it is we have enough information to warrant a tribunal. And again, this is in fairness to the citizens, to the police officer, and to the police service. It is inappropriate that you have a system of over 300 police officers and almost just 7,000 that are on suspension indefinitely. So and again, through the restructuring of the legal department, we are looking, again with the monitoring unit, we are looking at these situations, and each and every one we intend to deal with and fast track to ensure that police officers would either be brought back to duty, the suspension would end, or they're suspended with a specific timeline as to how long the suspension would be, or they would be fired, because there are several instances as well where there's enough information and based on the tribunal that can warrant that police officer being fired. And what this will do, this will ensure police officers are aware that there are consequences. There will be consequences for your action, and you cannot try to beat the system or find loopholes in the criminal justice system where you feel that you can just... We must never see the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service as being an avenue where you can benefit by being indisciplined and by persons being suspended on full pay based on a matter of indiscipline. It means basically that you are being rewarded for being indisciplined, and that should not be seen in the police service.
Commissioner of Police, have you been able to estimate, or the police service have been able to estimate over the last 10 years, what would it have cost the taxpayers? Is it $500 million for those 300 policemen who have been on suspension?
I would have to verify, sir, but it could very well be at that amount. And again, based on legal fees and so forth, it can very well be over 500 million.
And could you also indicate, based on your own analysis of the nature of some of these suspension, do you think that there is need for legislative action to address some of those persons who might be involved, as you said, in criminal activities? They have been convicted, they're in jail. How do we deal with these people who still continue to carry the tag of a police officer, even though they are in jail? Do you think that we need legislative action to deal with these matters?
It may very well help, sir, because the present situation that we are placed in is that there's this call of double jeopardy and the concern that, oh, you cannot you can't punish him twice on both two occasions for the same offense, especially if one is still pending. So many police officers, they have gone to court, they are on charges. Sometimes they are back out waiting for their day in court, but we can't bring them back in. So it may very well be an avenue that can rectify this. What I do as much as possible, I have a very good working relationship with the Police Social and Welfare Association, because you have to look after the rights of the police officers as well as the image and the productivity of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. One of the things that I can tell you that it is an option. I have spoken to the provost and I have looked at international best practice on this as well, sir, is that when someone is entering the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you are a recruit and you're willing to be, there's just about 2 years probation, and we can monitor you, but we have the right to remove you based on what you operate in 2 years. After that, it is very difficult to fire a police officer unless you make sure you have concrete information that can justify it. If not, this Commissioner of Police, I have probably over 200 court cases pending for all sorts of different matters. But the fact of the matter is that if there's a clear and present danger towards national security of a police officer based on intelligence that we have from national security that this officer is involved in very questionable activity, we fire him or her, they're going to immediately take the commissioner and the police to court and the state to court. And they may very well win, because the court is going to say, you can't fire someone based on intelligence. When it comes to national security, it is done worldwide. One of the things that has been seen to deal with it, sir, is the contracting of police officers, where the contracting of police officers means that every 3 years, your contract can be renewed or it can end. But again, this must not be seen as an avenue to affect continuity or to put the police officers, and this could only happen from new police officers coming into the system. But it has proven to be a very good avenue that where out of the 200-300, probably 100 should not be coming back. But we cannot move them based on intelligence. So using the concept of contracts, that can actually assist us in just ensuring that officer's his contract is not renewed.
All right. Commissioner of Police, in your submission or the TTPS submission to this committee, you mentioned that the monitoring, evaluation, and compliance unit does not only measurement of activities and outputs and outcomes, but they also deal with results, framework with targets set on an annual basis, which I find is very, 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 very positive. What I wanted to ask you is this. Does the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have an evidence-based and gender-responsive policy and or strategic plan in place? Now, let me just indicate, when we talk about gender-responsive budgeting, we are talking about a budget, which is your allocation, from what I've seen here, is $2.1 billion for personnel. Then you have another 124 million under the development program. So in all, the TTPS has been allocated roughly just under $2.3 billion for 2018-2019. Now, when we talk about a budget that is gender responsive, we are talking about a budget that works for everyone, ensuring that there's gender equity, distribution of the resources that you have been allocated, and at the same time contributing to what is called equal opportunities for all in your service, male as well as female. So I was just asking whether the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have a evidence-based and gender-responsive policy and or a strategic plan in place. I don't know if you could clarify that for me.
Yes, well, I'll try. With the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, there's no stringent policy pertaining to the ratio of officers, and correct me if I'm going in the wrong direction, in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service based on ethnic composition, religion, or gender.
No, we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, we not, no. It is a concept that our country has literally adopted, and we are trying to ensure that every department, every state agency gets involved in it. Some people call it gender mainstreaming, but we are not talking about male or we are not talking about female alone. We are talking about both male and female, and we want to ensure that when monies are allocated or resources are allocated to state agencies, that there is an equitable distribution of the resources to ensure that the interests, the needs, the requirements of the personnel within the police service are adequately addressed, and there's equality and there's equal opportunities for all. I don't know if you all have begun as a police service to address gender responsive budgeting as we speak. It might be a new concept to you, but I'm just asking if that is being considered by your service at this time.
So based on equal opportunity and gender equality, I will now pass that over to my Deputy Commissioner of Police to answer.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is all-inclusive. We now have actually about 30% of the service is female. So we do not have, although we have our Women Affairs Bureau that would look after the services of the women, female officers are served throughout the service, every division, branch, section, unit. So for training, we don't really differentiate male, female. We work within the ranks. So we have training for specific ranks, for specific areas, sections, and units. So all, male and female, are
one of the points that was made by the Commissioner of Police and the TTPS in your submission is that you measure your output, you measure your activities, which I support and this committee endorse fully. What I'm asking is that in this measurement of your activity, do you take into consideration the ratio of male men and women in the police service, in that measurement? I'm asking.
I will say no. We measure generally TTPS performance.
All right. So, as I said, it's a concept that the government has adopted and endorsed, but we probably need to engage the police service a little more in this whole concept of gender responsive budgeting. So whenever and whatever you are doing, the police service would have a responsibility in measuring its activities to ensure that the resources that are being deployed in the construction, let's say, of a police station, you have male and you have female within that police station. You have to ensure that your resources are equitably distributed to take into account the interests, the needs of both your male and your female, and not be an afterthought. So that is the point I was making.
Well, let me just clarify, and yes, that is done in the construction of all the buildings and everything.
All right. Let me just ask Madam Chair another question to the Commissioner of Police. You made a very interesting statement in your opening remarks. You said to the effect, and I'm summarizing what you have said, that inadequate funding is contributing and could contribute to a slowing down of whatever objectives or whatever initiatives that the police service may have on the agenda or the agenda. And therefore you need to have resources being released in an adequate amount, consistent with what has been allocated, and it must be timely as well. Those 2 points. Could you share with this committee those areas of the police service where you have an inadequate supply of funds, even though it was budgeted, it was approved by the Parliament, but as we speak today, you are in a deficit as we speak in the resources that you require to carry out your duties as Commissioner of Police and your TTPS in Trinidad and Tobago. Could you share with us those areas of the police service that might be under stress at this time because of an inadequate supply of funding at this time? Could you share with us?
Yes. Chairman? Oh, can I? Okay. Yeah, yes, sir. What I said, I wish to clarify, it is not, at times, it is not a slowing down, but it has now come to a crashing halt. And what I'm asking has nothing to do with requirement for more resources other than what has been approved in the budget. The fact of the matter is I can just lead some traveling, uniform, electricity, telephones, water, house rates, maintenance, training, short-term employment, fees, everything. Everything. And if I could just clarify, in the vote, there are certain we have the recurring expenditure. As at this time, sir, we have not received allocation of any for fiscal year 2018 into 2019. What this means is that apart from...
When you say have you received any?
Apart from the salaries.
Yes.
All the things that the good for goods and services. What I am trying to get now is $47 million to pay off bills that the police service owes debtors that was approved in the 17-18 fiscal year to pay off their bills from 2017 to 2018. So I have not even started in getting funds for 2018 to 2019. Now, when this happens, this affects the image of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service because we will rent property. We have a police station that we have to rent from someone, and the person will not, if he or she has not been paid in 5 months, they control the police service from their home, which is a police station. We have situations where TSTT, they will disconnect us. We have situations because where prisoners will not be fed properly. So this is not me to try to bring out, but I am very concerned. If it is that we want a police service to operate in an effective manner, you can't be, if there's an allocation and we do not adhere to the allocation and we start pleading for more, then we have not done our job. But we are doing our job, but we cannot adhere to our obligation because the funds have not yet been released for 2018 to 2019. Now, there's a difference in the projects to the funds for goods and services. We have received $20 million that has assisted us greatly in the projects. Now, this has a very big part to play towards the transformation of the police service, and we are very thankful that we have received this. And this has assisted us in starting the process for tasers, pepper spray, the belts, the uniform, the dashboard and the camera, dashboard cameras, the notepads for the vehicles, and other vehicles. So that we are moving forward in the transformation of the police service. But back at the ranch, the basic goods and services that are required, we have not yet received funding. With 20 million, there was a 20 million we had to take for projects to actually pay off bills. So it has affected some of the projects that we had to move forward with. We do hope that in the very near future, but what happens as well, when we have many debtors, they have now started pulling back on us. And it has affected greatly towards the repair of vehicles, maintenance, costs, refurbishment. And by doing this, obviously, so we will see how it is that it would obviously affect the service.
Let me just ask a direct question here. My information tells me that goods and services, the estimated allocation for 2019 fiscal is $327,171,000. Are you telling this committee on this day, at this time, that you have not received as a Trinidad and Tobago Police Service not a cent from the $327,171,000? Is that what you're telling us?
So, and again, to specify the exact amount, I will now hand over to, I will ask Mrs. Hart, the head of finance, to further go in depth on this. Sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, committee members. Thus far this year, yes, the allocation under goods and services is the figure that you just indicated, $327,171,000. The monies that we have received were utilized to pay off bills for 2017-2018. So therefore, in terms of the 2018-2019 expenditure, the funding that we have not really received funding to pay off the 2018-2019 expenditure. So the funding that we received was utilized to pay off previous year bills. And I say that with one clarification, in the sense that our wages and salaries, those ones are being met. But the other, the consumables, those are the ones that we have not received funding for to pay off bills for 18-19.
Could you tell this committee how much you, the police service, have received for 2018-2019? I know whatever you would have received, you would have used that to pay off your last year bills. I'm asking on behalf of this committee, out of the $327,171,000 under goods and services, how much money has the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service received under this item thus far? That is the point I'm asking.
Thus far, we have received shy short of $53 million. And I'm speaking exclusive of the wages and salaries.
That's goods and services.
Goods and services and a little minor equipment inside of there as well.
But you have received $53 million in this fiscal year.
Yes.
But you have applied it to debts.
Because funding...
No, I'm not asking why. We just want to understand.
Yes.
Okay. So, Member Mark, if you just permit me one question.
Oh, sorry.
So, if we look at this document you give us here, Recurrent Expenditure Budget 2019, and this is for up to the month ending 28/02/2019. Okay? I mean, you had it named as an appendix, but it was marked, so I have a difficulty in referring to it as appendix, whatever. But that is the heading. All right, so we're looking at goods and services 02. When I look at column 7, which are outstanding commitments, you there with me? Many of those columns have 0 outstanding commitments. Okay? They have an expenditure in them to the end of February 2019, but 0 outstanding commitments. So how are you paying them?
The regulation has guided us to the fact that in order to commit an item in the vote book, we need to have the releases. So therefore, if we do not have the releases, we cannot commit in the vote book. We'll be in a violation of the regulations. What happens in some instances is that, for example, in the areas of the maintenance of vehicles and some other areas, you find that the suppliers are willing to give us the goods on credit, pending the receipt of releases where we will satisfy those debts. So therefore, these commitments are what we have in the vote book, but like I said, the regulation would forbid us from entering items in the vote book for which we do not have releases. So what we in fact have are bills on hand.
So the bills on hand, are they at all reflected in your expenditure statement at the end of the month?
These are reflected not on this sheet, but yes, they are reflected in an internal expenditure statement. And we do communicate that information to the budgeting division. When we are requesting releases, we'll indicate to them the quantum of the bills that we have on hand.
So, and maybe I should ask Commissioner, is that something, that bills at hand statement, is that something you could share with this committee? Because this document that we have, these expenditure statements, would paint a very different picture unless we had this kind of conversation.
Yes, Chairman. In fact, I have it here. Just concluded. We have it here. And again, what we are actually doing is improper practice, because basically we are actually acquiring things on credit. And we are hoping that we would pay a supplier in the near future. So that is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service we are actually running along a hope, based on the hope that previous persons who we have worked with, based on their good heart, would continue to provide. Because if they do not, there are many things that would collapse.
Apart from improper practices, it might make you somewhat very vulnerable, I would think.
Yes.
Member Mark, you have some other questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask the Commissioner of Police to join me on page 42 of your submission? Under 001, under 06, General Service, 001, development of a computer system for the police service. Could you tell us, having regard to the allocation, I should say, for 2019, which was an improvement on what we had in 2018 by close to $12 million, given the 24 projects outlined in your submission, could you indicate to this committee that, according to what I have before me, out of the $12 million that you were allocated, in the 20 million rather, that you have been allocated in 2019 to do what you consider to be 24 critical interrelated projects to improve the technology reach of the police service. Can you share with this committee what is the status of these projects in the context of your allocation for 2019?
Yes, sir. I will just...
including releases thus far for
Understood.
This amount.
Yeah, Mr. Barlow will be able to go in detail on that, sir.
Thank you.
Good day again, Chair and member. We have received no releases for this financial so far. We do, because a lot of the projects are interrelated, right? What happens is that it is difficult to complete a project when, if you look at cabling is required to do something with a server room, to do something with certain applications and things like that. So we are able to do little pieces, right? Although Parliament had approved 120 million for these particular projects, we are really held back by some of the allocations we have got over the last couple of years.
Now, I don't know if the Commissioner of Police or your good self could share with this committee what impact the non-release of funding amounting to $20 million thus far is having on the police service as it relates to these interrelated projects that the police service would have developed and from what you have advanced are critical for your advancement and the advancement of the citizenry in TNT in terms of the services that this would provide or these projects would provide. So, could you share with us what impact the non-release of funds are having or is having?
So as the rest of the police service, IT is no different as far as what we have to do to be able to keep things running, right? Due to the lack of funds, systems that are aging, different things that we would have done to be able to improve and also expand, we are reaching a point where, we're having quite a bit of problems with some of the vendors that have put their hands forward to us to help us during this time where we were unable to really pay some of the bills that we should pay. So it is coming, as the commissioner stated, it's coming to a crash because, people are not as kind because they too are having problems. So a lot of the various programs that we have are actually on hold, awaiting funding.
Madam Chair, if you allow me one final question on this rounds. I would like to ask the Commissioner of Police to join me on page 46 and 47, respectively, of your submission. I will share with the Commissioner very briefly a situation where we have in this country a situation where parts for buses, for example, become very problematic. And one of the reasons we have been advised has to do with the amount of brands that they have in the service at this time. When I looked at your submission on page 46 and 47 respectively, I counted roughly about 20 different brands of vehicles that have been ordered or that have been utilized by the police service thus far for whatever operations you may want to embark upon. I wanted to ask the Commissioner of Police whether he has seen or is there a need for the police service to rationalize and to standardize the purchase of vehicles within the police service, and whether you see a need, as I have seen in New York and other states in the United States, where you have customized, built police vehicles that are so strong that if weak vehicles that I am driving in New York run into those police vehicles, my vehicle is destroyed, and the police service vehicle in New York remains standing. So I'm asking the question, with what we have seen on page 46 and 47 respectively, is the Commissioner of Police and the TTPS considering in the future the customization of police vehicles in this country that would be specially branded only for the police service? And if I had to drive a Prado, I drive my Prado as a private citizen. But when it comes to the police, they have a specially built vehicle on the roads of Trinidad and Tobago, rather than what we have here at this time, some 20 different brands of vehicles. I just want to get some clarification on that.
Yes, I agree with you. You're on the right track. And that, again, based on the research we have done internationally, we have seen that is, and it is not just for the strength of the vehicle. It allows police officers, you move from one vehicle to another. We have actually seen situations where there was a previous vehicle a few years ago, and 27 of these vehicles, we lost it because police officers, they were abusing the system of the vehicle gearing down. And so you move from one type of a vehicle to another. At times, police officers may not be aware that the braking system or how it is you can actually do a J-turn or an evacuation drill. It can be different. So at times, it is very good to have a regimented type vehicle so that officers, you move from one vehicle, you have to patrol another vehicle, you're aware of the type of vehicle and what the vehicle can and cannot do. Having said that, there would be always a need for different types of vehicles for duties such as counterterrorism, covert operatives, vehicles for patrols for the Guard and Emergency Branch can be different to an emergency response vehicle, a first responder vehicle, to a vehicle that will be providing a specific type of training and units. What I think you're speaking much more so about the patrolling vehicles and those type of vehicles. And you are correct. We need to streamline it. What we are also looking at is not just about trying to acquire the cheapest vehicles, because obviously not say good things not cheap, but you might get a vehicle that might be slightly cheaper, but when it is, you have to look at the maintenance of that vehicle based on the wear and tear that is expected, because at times a police vehicle may be out on the road for about 18 to 20 hours per day. It is not the average type vehicle. So you need to ensure that, and the parts have easy access to it. Mr. Ramrup, the head of administration, he can elaborate a lot more on it. So.
Good day, Chair. The question you posed, your observation relative to the different makes and models is spot on. We do have a lot, but just remember the request asks for all makes and models. Now, in some of these categories, we have SUV for basic patrol, we have sedans, we also have covert type vehicles. So we eliminated a lot of the long time system of many different makes and models. Now, we are looking at the purpose-built police vehicle as you recommended there, with enhanced capability on the electrical system, the suspension, even the type of body. But what we are really trying to do is to get that normal, let's say a vehicle that is already in Trinidad and Tobago from one of the different dealers, just with the built-in capability from the factory. So we're not going to customize any vehicle. We're not going to get any vehicle that is not foreign to Trinidad and Tobago. So that way we could keep the vehicles on the road for longer periods, just with the enhanced capability and structure of the vehicle.
Okay, Madam Chair, time.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Commissioner, in the submission, there was a question about conflict of interest. And if I remember well, the response indicated that there was no framework, save and except, I think, what was there in your police service regulations, section 133, which speaks to about 3 different instances. What I wanted to find out is if there have been any recent instances of conflict of interest within the police service.
No, Chairman, no, at this time, no. We don't have anything. No.
All right, so let me ask this. And in the regulation, it says an officer shall not engage in any activity, occupation, or undertaking which would impair his usefulness as an officer or in any way conflict with the interests of the service. And B, shall not without the consent of the commissioner accept any paid employment or engage in any trade, profession, commercial activity, etc., whether in or outside of Trinidad and Tobago. Those are 2 of the provisions. I wanted to ask, in discussing the issue of the 300-odd police officers who are on suspension, etc., and your indication that some of them are abroad working and so on, would that fall within conflict of interest?
No, it can, Chair, but and then you also have the other with acquiring shares as well, yeah.
I read these 2 specific ones because I wanted to zone in on the officers who you indicated, to your knowledge, they are officers abroad working because they're on suspension for however long. There may be officers here working who are on suspension and drawing double salaries. Would this come under the conflict of interests?
Well, it would, Chair, but again, it will make it very difficult for us unless we be able to pinpoint what the individual is actually doing. And therein lies the problem, where when these individuals, they're on suspension, we'll pick up hearsay, we'll get information, because they're not accountable to us anymore. So even though they're under the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they're still a Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they're an officer. What it is that they're doing, so at times it is outside of our hands. Now, pertaining to this same regulation, there are many officers that they have actually, they are police officers, but they have asked to actually for a source of income, but they must write to the Commissioner of Police to get that requisite approval. And then I will verify whether it is if there's a conflict of interest that is going to affect the police service in any way, if it is going to affect his or her performance based on too much time being spent at that. So that can easily be done. Those on suspension, if it is that it is being done, it would be done without the authorization of the Commissioner of Police.
have you had any instances, since you're commissioner, with officers writing to engage in other activity for you to give your consent?
Yes, yes, Chairman, many. And on several occasions, I would unfortunately have to reject the requests because there is a conflict of interest, whether it is that is in contrast with the regulations or with their duty as a police officer, and or also ensuring that may also affect that officer in the performance of their duty because the time that will be accumulated in that extra duty may affect their performance. So at times we would. On other occasions, it would be allowed because what we have seen is that these things can also assist in the development of the police officer by partaking in certain activities that can enhance and improve their own performance later on as a police officer.
And just for me to ensure that I understand, outside of the scenarios here listed in this Regulation 133, which deals about activities that conflict, which deal with, accepting some other job, which without the consent of the commissioner, and which deals with acquiring shares in some company or something. Outside of those statutory scenarios, does the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service identify anything else as constituting a conflict of interest?
No, Chairman, no. They'll have some specific things that, for example, Carnival, if a police officer is asking for time off, but they want to work as a security officer in a band, I will see that as a conflict of interest.
But certainly, because that comes within A and B, right? It certainly comes within A and B. And what I'm saying is that I expect that if these are just the parameters, and that's what I'm trying to find out, if there are any other instances that one considers conflict. So I might be sitting in your procurement unit, and my brother has a business going on and something that we want to procure. I want to know if there are other instances, and if there are other instances that you all identify as conflict of interest, and there's no policy, there's no guiding document and manual, what guides your police officers?
Well, I think in the Public Procurement Act, we have to adhere to that as well. And in that Public Procurement Act, the police officer has to adhere to that because that is also part of the regulations. So apart from this, based on that Public Procurement Act, where it is that you cannot be standing in that, he or she must adhere to that regulation as well. So this year is not going to allow them to slip out of it just based on these matters alone.
Okay, so that basically you just rely on the general law. There's no policy document or no manual that someone could go to study, see instances, flesh out, and so on at all in your police service. That's what I understand.
Yes, Chairman.
And secondly, I understand, again, you operate within the parameters of the general law with respect to what consequences one suffers. So that lots of it, if I understand well, may be somewhat informal, because what you say that if there's a suspicion of a conflict, what is happening is that the person goes to their senior supervisor or their senior officer or the commissioner of police for appropriate action and guidance. Okay, so it's a lot of it is, I would think, informal and almost subjective.
Yes, Chairman, yes.
Okay, so might I ask, is there any plan then for you to develop, because I mean, a lot of what you're saying on the operational side of things, of what you're doing is cutting edge. So in terms of developing a conflict of interest policy outside of that, is there any immediate plan for that?
Chair, with respect to the conflict of interest policy, right now we are guided when it comes to the procurement of goods and services, irrespective of the new act. The police service, since I've been there in 2010, has always practiced and regulated itself in terms of the conflict of interest when it comes to the provision of goods and services. So it may not have had a formal document at a policy level, but we have always managed the operations in such a way that basically no officer or anybody who has an interest could be invited or sit on any evaluation committee and those type of things. What we will do going forward, consistent with the new Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act 2015, we will look at it and probably establish a document for the service in terms of a public.
So you will now consider, that's
yes,
what you're saying.
Yes.
And I want to ask a similar question about a fraud policy, because I see we asked something about a fraud policy, and while I can't direct you immediately to the page, I remember a response being something like, and this is my summary, almost because we are police and we have all these units, we don't need no fraud policy. Our units will ensure there's no fraud. I mean, that might be a very rudimentary summary, but that's how it hit me like. So, yeah. This is page 29 of his submission. If you have an internal fraud policy. Right? And in fact, what you said to me is something to the effect is that you have other internal control measures, all designed to mitigate against the likelihood of fraud. So first you said, look, they have the overarching legislation like the Audit and Exchequer Act, the Central Tenders Board Act, Integrity in Public Life Act, and so on, and your fraud score, your Professional Standards Bureau, your Financial Intelligence Bureau, your Monitoring, Evaluation, and Compliance Unit, and that sort of thing. And then you went on to say, and of course your Planning, Research, and Project Implementation Unit, and other internal mechanisms, all designed to mitigate against the likelihood of fraud.
Chair, I agree with you. All the things that are already there in previous regulations and laws, it should not be seen as a cop-out by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I understand your point, and I think that is a very simple procedure that we can and should implement. It's a conflict of interest policy. So you're quite correct, and we thank you for it, and we would have it implemented.
But you know, Commissioner, I'm going to put you on a timeline, so you tell me when. Because I know you're doing plenty things. You tell me when, and we will work within that timeline.
Chair, would 3 months be appropriate?
Okay, so 3 months from now gives me what, June? End of June? So I would say the 1st of July. Good?
Thank you for the extra day.
Okay, good. All right, thank you very much. Now, the other thing I wanted to find out is, and, you know, it's just to get a little greater clarification so that maybe we could see how we can help. We spoke a little bit about training, and I remember in answer to Dr. Bodo and that $1.5 million, you had indicated that that was for international training. Right? I think that's what I recall, that was for international training. Now, we're on page 15. 15 and 16 is where I'm directing. Now, in terms of the plan for various training programs for fiscal 2018-2019, I mean, there are a number of areas and really laudable. What I want to ask is, has any of these programs to date been delivered?
Chair, what I have to do is to liaise with the provost to give you a and I could get that in, yes, bring now.
Reminded by one of the members of the committee, of course, we do remember what Mrs. Hart told us about the releases. But I also appreciate that in your submission on page 17, that some of this training can be facilitated at no cost through the Public Service Academy, where, if I understand it well, there's no cost. Okay? So that in terms of, in letting me know whether, in addition, whether you could let us know if there has been any collaboration with the Public Service Academy to maybe carry out some of these training modules, so that at the end of fiscal 2019, I guess, some of these laudable objectives would have been achieved. Okay?
Yes.
And the last question I want to ask in terms of training, Commissioner, is I had also seen when you spoke about your membership in international agencies like Interpol, etc., and other agencies where you pay subscriptions, there were training accommodations, some with respect to covering your accommodation, covering your cost of transportation, etc. So I would also like to know if any training facilities in 2018, 2019 were accessed under these programs, where, of course, either your costs would have been minimal or non-existent. All right? If you wish, I could in the meantime find the page and just refer you
Page
to
26.
Page 26. Yes. All right? So, rather than put you on the spot, if you could just deal with all of that, together with when you give us the response with training. And my last question for now is youth clubs. I see you have two sets of allocations under youth clubs. One is your non-profit institutions vote, and one is your establishment of police youth club facilities. Has any release been given under either of those votes?
Yes, we got releases on the youth club on the recurrent side. We got some releases
on the youth club facilities.
Yeah, on the youth club, yes.
That's recurrent or that's DP?
Recurrent.
That's recurrent.
Yes.
And therefore, that would be for the clubs that are already established?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So could you let us know, because that's when the allocation is 3 million. 3 million?
3 million, yes.
How much of that to date you've got?
I cannot give you that information offhand, ma'am.
Okay, so you let me know?
I will let you know.
And therefore, what has happened then to the establishment of the police youth clubs where you should have got $1 million? I think this is DP.
Yes, that's...
Right? And this was to establish one in El Dorado, one in Greenvale, and one in Mason Hall.
Yes, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Good day, Chair and the team. If you would see what we said here, we have not established any new youth clubs. What we have undertaken to do is refurbish the 3 that are identified here, and no work has been started as yet because we haven't had any releases.
We haven't had any releases. So the response where we were told that you expect procurement and tender fees at the end of March 2019, that goalpost has been moved.
Yes, Chair.
All right. Any likelihood of any sort of prospect of releases in maybe the next months or so?
Sure. I have been liaising with the Ministry of Finance. We do hope that very soon $47 million would be provided. But again, that will just complete the outstanding bills from 2017 to 2018.
Mm-hmm. So the promise of the $60 million that all of us were jumping up for in January, and where we got 20 million in January, and we promised 20 million in February. Did we get the 20 million in February?
Yeah, the 20 million in February that was towards the projects. I had to shut down all the projects because we had to pay bills.
Okay, so of the 60 million, we've got 40 already.
Yes.
Even though we couldn't put it to what it was, we've got 40
yes.
already. And I got the impression, and this is newspapers, so you'll forgive me if my impression was wrong. I'm not saying the article was wrong, my impression was wrong. I got the impression that part of the delay of not getting the 60 million in a full tranche was because there was some sort of deficiency on documentation from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Have we cured those deficiencies and those defects as contained in the article?
Chairman, that was totally inaccurate. Everything that was required from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to the Ministry of Finance was provided. Again, that was a cop-out by whoever said it. At no time did the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service not adhere to our obligation at what was required to the Ministry of Finance.
I was almost tempted to ask you what was the inaccuracy, the article or the source?
The perception that the reason why the funds did not come forward to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is because we did not make the request. We have all the documentation. So basically what it was, Chairman, if I could clarify, it was $80 million, and that was to deal with the projects. $20 million was provided, so we started to kickstart in all of the different things that we spoke about. The second 20, again, because of we reached a crashing halt with many of the goods and services where persons started pulling back. So it held back on the projects. But there are situations where you can actually start preparing the tender process for certain things in anticipation. So we are not waiting until that happens. We are putting everything in place so that we can just kickstart. There's one thing I'd just like to mention. One of the concerns that I have seen in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Chair, forgive me, but again, it has to do with funding. We have a situation where at times the police service, we would be told what police stations are to be built, where it must be built, how it is to be built, the structure, the size, and then after we become obligated to fulfill the expense. And as I mentioned, in countries where police stations are becoming less and smaller, if it is that these things are imposed on the police service, it means that we now an expense will now be borne upon us. And so there will be certain agencies in the state outside of the police service that would direct where police stations are to be built. And I do have a concern about that, because if it is at the police service, we must have an input, if not a directive, because if you build a police station in Tobago, for example, that if you build, say, for example, 2 police stations at 20,000 square feet, you're speaking about 450 police officers, but there are no more than 250 police officers in Tobago, so why would you build it? And what I'm saying is just, I'm saying here, see, but this is fact. So when it is you do these things, it is really strongly advised in future that UDCORT and other institutions must seek the requisite input, approval, and knowledge base of the experts in the field who will be aware of what is required, rather than because you are the builders and you are the contractors that you will just build this and then impose it upon the police service.
In terms of, I think too, following up on what Member Mark had asked about, again, gender-responsive budgeting, in terms of whatever is being built has to take into account what you as the commissioner and your team determine is going to be how your strength is configured, not just your absolute numbers, but how your strengths are configured.
And that's it. We have little, if any, say at all. And I think that it makes it difficult for us to adhere to what it is you recommended when it is imposed upon us. And then we may now need to start making changes to adhere to what it is that you spoke about and other matters.
Member Duque, Member Bodo.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I just want to take us back to the issue of police vehicles, because, that's, when we talk about policing, we talk about police officers and police vehicles. It's a very emotive issue. And of course, there's a challenge, the allegations many times that when citizens call upon the police, sometimes the response is slow because of lack of vehicles. So if I may draw your attention to page 45, on the top of page 46, and this is just to get an update here. This would have been in response to the Auditor General report for 2017, which states that there were 1,679 operational vehicles in this fleet. Can you update us? Can you tell us if that is the current figure? Has that increased or decreased?
We actually procured 77 vehicles last year.
So the total now?
No, but it has not actually gone up because we've disposed of about 85.
All right, so the current...
So the actual number is total 1,669.
1,669?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you... Right. Now, that, if we would turn to the top of the next page, 46, last year, it says that there were 1,285 vehicles operational. Can you give us an indication of what is the current figure as you speak now?
It's roughly around 1,310, 1310.
1310.
Yeah, it's a dynamic thing.
Okay, so then let us go back to page 11 and speak about the maintenance of vehicles, because we're looking now at a deficit. Sorry, we're looking at about over 300 vehicles out of service. So let's talk a little bit about the maintenance of vehicles. And the question in my mind here would be, now your revised allocation, your allocation for 2019 is 34 million. And Commissioner, of course, the public will be concerned in view of the fact that you're saying that you have not gotten enough releases and the impact it will have on the number of operational, functional vehicles on the road. So you've had 1,023 vehicles repaired. Just give us an idea of how far we are behind then in terms of the repair program. Because you're saying that you would have needed about 34 million for the financial year to do repairs, and we are saying now that we would have just spent 9 million if we look at the page top of page 12. Yes.
Yeah, as indicated previously, we said even though we're not getting the funding, we've been getting the service provided by many persons. So when you looked at the figure of 1,023 vehicles repaired, and you see the cost of $9,055,000, and I put in the end there the total number of repairs, so some vehicles are repaired more than once.
Of course.
Right? So we basically having most of the fleet still repaired. What we've kind of held back on road traffic accidents and things that are major component failure like transmission and engine, because the fleet is getting aged as time has passed. Because over the last, the fleet is getting aged, as I said, because it's normal passenger type vehicles as indicated previously. But generally, we are still trying to keep the fleet going. Some providers at times say they can't bear the cost. If we get some money, we try and repair, we try and work with them, but generally, the fleet is still operational.
So you're saying that you're meeting your targets despite the challenges that you have? And using other methods.
Yeah, we continue to work to get the vehicles on the road.
Commissioner, if I may ask you, and I want to draw your attention, if I could move away from the repair, and let's look at page 18 with regards to under minor equipment purchases. And this is with reference to new police vehicles. And I note that there are two mechanisms with which new vehicles are procured, and you can correct me. One is the replacement of the fleet, and you use the vote of recurrent expenditure minor equipment purchases. And the second would be the expansion of the fleet. So the question, first of all, and I asked this question in relation to the answer provided to question 1 on the sub-item vehicles. And the question was, what are the reasons for the decrease in allocation for the sub-item? And the answer here is that the TTPS requested $39,812,000 for the replacement of vehicles. So the question, Commissioner, would be, are you satisfied that the fleet of 1,600 and plus is adequate to service Trinidad and Tobago? I just want to get your thoughts on that. So why would have asked for 39 million, such a big allocation?
Yeah, so ideally we're looking at...
We might be talking Alice in Wonderland here, but I just want to know what could be the ideal for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, 1,800, 1,900 would be ideal. And again, by doing that, with extra vehicles, remember at times, like for example, the emergency response patrol vehicles, a vehicle cannot and should not be operational 24 hours a day, because those vehicles are supposed to be rotating one after the other. So you need vehicles to rotate. If it is you have a vehicle constantly operating 24 hours a day, the lifespan of it will be greatly reduced. So you need that at least 18 to 1,900 to have vehicles pulled in for preventative maintenance, for rotation, because if you have certain operational patrols on a 24-hour basis, so 18 to 1,900 would be ideal. Pardon? Yeah. And there's also the other elements as well with the covert operatives as well.
So the 18 to 1,900 would be vehicles operational in service, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So technically then, if you're taking out, accounting for the fact that some will always be out of service, we're looking at a total fleet of how many vehicles then?
Well, the intention, as everything else, is try to have a high percentage of the vehicles we have operational. I mean, give or take, the 1,900 will work because we'll always have at least about 1,600 or 1,700 operational.
I hear you. Commissioner, the other question that sometimes the public will wonder about is, how do you allocate vehicles to police stations? How is the allocation of these vehicles done throughout the country? Can you give us some indication of how that is done?
Yeah, well, again, it is based on the threat assessment, based on the requirements for specific units. So the Guard and Emergency Branch, the MOPS, the Special Operational Response Team, there will be a specific requirement for those for officers there. There will be covert operatives as well from the CID and other units that will require that type of clandestine type operation. Then the police stations themselves, there's a basic requirement for vehicles at those stations. Then you can actually move to operational vehicles based on a situation such as serious crime, homicide, where vehicles must be dispatched from that unit. And then you will look at the administrative aspect in the police administrative department where vehicles are also required. So there are a number of different requirements. It is not specifically just for police patrolling. The variety is vast. And what we do is we look at the requirements as much as possible. What we're trying to do, however, is to ensure, again, going back to the systems of accountability, a police vehicle that is doing administrative work to drop a document should not have the aspect of a siren to be able to abuse it, because we have seen situations where it goes back, and the reason I'm saying this, it goes back to the 18 to 1900. If we put systems to ensure accountability and consequences, there will be my intention is to minimize the number of vehicles being lost based on negligent driving. And we have seen a number of vehicles that have been involved in accidents where it was not based on the distress call. Because they have easy access to a siren and a blue light, that have been involved in a number of accidents, and the number of accidents will minimize the number of vehicles. And by doing that, it will then put added burden on the other vehicles that need to operate now because of the diminishing returns of other vehicles that become unserviceable.
Commissioner, thank you. But as you mentioned, the aspect of negligent driving, and that just takes my mind back to two recent incidents where police officers have been involved. And I'm sure you may not be able to pronounce it as to whether negligence was involved, but I'm particularly concerned about what would have happened on the bus route recently. Can you shed some light on what may have happened there?
So, well, obviously I wouldn't go in detail, but what I can tell you, I think it would be appropriate. Because of systems for accountability, I can state that at that particular accident, I knew the speed that vehicle was going at seconds prior to impact. And therein lies the importance of systems for accountability through the GPS. And I'm now turning it from a 20-second gap to 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, we'll be able to know the speed that vehicles went. And by doing that now, police officers will be aware that if it is I go above the speed limit, I am not in a distress call, I can now be accountable for if there's an accident, and also if it is I now have to be culpable for repairing the vehicle. I can refer to in Chaguanas a few months ago when a truck was actually going out, came from the minor road onto a major road, and it was hit by a police vehicle. 2 vehicles, in fact. And these were 2 brand new vehicles. Yes, the truck went onto the major road, so he was wrong. But we checked, and the 2 vehicles were going 140 kilometers an hour and it wasn't a highway. They now have to adhere to and explain on what grounds they were doing it, because we checked and to ensure that there was not a distress call, it was not a 999 call, they were just racing to get back to the station. Yeah. So by putting systems, going back to my point of the 2 of the 4 systems for the restructuring, measurement of performance and accountability, it will play a very big part towards minimizing the number of accidents and to ensure police officers adhere to their obligation not to abuse it. So going to the accidents, the information can assist greatly to ascertain whether police officers were negligent in the performance of their duty by looking at the speed through the GPS.
Commissioner, I'm sure the public will appreciate that information, but let me just ask you further in terms of negligent driving. And there are a couple of issues that sometimes is raised in the public domain. One, a police officer is allowed to speak on their cell phone, holding the cell phone. Are they allowed to do that? Is there a special law that allows them to do that? Because I've seen many instances of that. The second is with regards to wearing seatbelts. Is there a law that allows them not to wear seatbelts? And the third issue would be the issue of insurance and liability when civilians are killed in or damaged in accidents. Can you shed some light on those 3 issues?
The first, definitely not. There's not a law that provides police officers to go outside of what is required. There's nothing that gives the police officers the exception for the use of a cell phone whilst driving. As it pertains to the situation with the seatbelt, It's a very ticklish situation because the few officers that may do it, there is an operational procedure for counterterrorism anti-ambush drills where it is a specific type of training that may ask for police officers not to have the safety belt because they need to move themselves quickly in case of an anti-ambush drill. It is a very delicate matter. I will prefer not to say much more because basically and it goes just to the system as well with tint. There's no law that says that gives certain persons authorization, but a G5 tint, we have seen it in certain vehicles. But again, there's not a law. There's nothing that gives you that get out of jail free card that you are allowed to do it. So it is a very delicate situation. And the last one was
the insurance aspect of it.
Yeah,
insurance.
Anybody could. Sorry, you could clarify that one again, please.
Okay, so in terms of a civilian getting injured, by a police vehicle or being killed, as would have happened at the bus route.
That again, because it's a vehicle and it's a government vehicle, the insurance policy then kicks in. But it goes back to my concern, whereby the police officers at times they may be negligent in the performance of their duty, and they are not culpable because of that same insurance. I am trying to alter that because this has been the problem where police officers have written off vehicles based on poor driving practices and nothing has happened. The officer is not culpable. There's no degree of that he now becomes responsible and he has to pay or anything like that. So when this happens, it allows the product of opportunity for individuals to believe that they can abuse the system, crash vehicles, and all you'll get is another set of car keys. What I am doing now, similar to the initial, the two matters you spoke about, sir, my first immediate action drill will be to suspend them from driving. Depending on the situation, they can then be suspended. And then, if anything, then after criminal charges can be laid.
Commissioner, I just want to ask you one last question. I want to go back to the bus route, and I sometimes would use the bus route officially, of course. But my concern is that, and in this particular case, you mentioned that the vehicle was speeding. But my concern is that for a bus route, there's so much access, easy access for civilians. And of course, that will inevitably result in accidents. Would you support or do you consider that perhaps walkovers should be built on the bus route at specific points to try and avoid that kind of accident taking place? I am scared because sometimes you drive and then you're driving at a normal speed and out of nowhere somebody will step onto the bus route. It's a very frightening situation. And it's not something that happens in other countries in that kind of roadway. Okay, well, first thing I just want to clarify. I didn't say that the vehicle was speeding. I said I have full knowledge of the exact speed that the vehicle was going at. Sorry. Okay, so, and obviously I wouldn't say what speed at this time, but we are aware. Pertaining to that other matter, so again, I think it goes both ways. The persons who, on many occasions, you're driving a vehicle, especially on the priority bus route, you need to adhere to the law. And because at times we have seen it on the bus route where persons, they go above the speed limit, you have to acknowledge and understand the zebra crossing. If you see the hazard lights that is blinking, you have to understand, you have to slow down. And I think it is bad practice, but again, it goes both ways. We have seen pedestrians as well, that we know the typical thing where they train thing of bunk spinner. And so it goes both ways. I am also, however, put in systems where we have had too many situations of persons abusing the use of the priority, even by the police service, the system of prisoners being transported. It is a very improper practice. I have given a mandate and I've directed that at no time should the vehicle, there's no need for the vehicles to go above the speed limit. They've been breaking every traffic light. It has been brought to my attention. It is a disaster waiting to happen. And it is not required. If it is that the police officers, we did not arrive at the prison on time, well, then we have failed. We should not try to jeopardize and put the lives of others at risk because we did not show up on time to collect the prisoners. Likewise, with the situations, if there's a homicide, any unfortunate homicide it is, but there's nothing to warrant and mandate that when you're taking the body now to forensic, that you have to be using the siren. It's not to say that the body and the evidence is deteriorating to the point that you have to get there. But these are all avenues where almost every police vehicle had a siren, and it is not required. So what I'm doing is minimizing the abuse of the siren, minimizing the use of the siren, and by using the systems through the Operational Command Center, we can verify if you're going above the speed limit,
we can then contact you and say you have not gone on a distress call. Why are you going above the speed limit?
Commissioner, one last question, and this refers to, Madam Chair, this refers to the issue of those vehicles that, unmarked vehicles that drive with blue lights. I know it might be a, a technical issue, a confidential issue, but can you shed light on when this is permitted, and from a citizen point of view, how do you respond to that blue light vehicle unmarked behind you trying to get you out the way? How do you?
Well, there are certain vehicles through the CID where those officers would be in an unmarked vehicle, and then they may immediately trigger something based on information that they have to remove to move immediately. It does not in any way warrant that everyone must use it. There's something I could bring to your attention that even the police service, for us to use blue lights, we must require permission from the Transport Commissioner. So for years, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we did not have the requisite approval. I requested that last year. So even the police service, we do not have authorization to use a siren or a blue light unless we get approval from the Transport Commissioner. I have made the request, he has approved it. But now, I must mandate that only specific vehicles must use it and only when required. It cannot be abused. And again, there's a particular situation where persons have access to it. There are individuals in magistrates and judges and others who also remember they also have a type of security based on a threat assessment, and they would have police officers with them. And there may be situations where the siren might also be used. So it would be an unmarked vehicle. But so at all times, I will ask the public to adhere to that. We must not in any way take it towards us feeling that the police is blatantly doing something outside. We have to adhere to it. But at the same time, I could give the public the assurance I am doing all that is required from the prisoners, from the persons, from a homicide victim, from persons who are in covert vehicles. It cannot and it must not be abused.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner, just one little point on those blue lights. Is there a specification for those blue lights? They have some blinding ones that must be jeopardizing drivers. I mean, I've been driving behind some of those blue lights and I'm blinded. So in terms of, I'm really happy to hear that you have to get permission from the Transport Commissioner. And if I want to ask if there are certain specs for those blue lights.
Chair, the blue lights we have, it's almost identical to the same blue lights used in NYPD, Chicago, Boston, and others. It's almost the same. The difference lies, however, is that what they have done is they have connected it to their parking light, for example. So during the day, your park lights are not used. So the light that you will have will be, you can have it during the day. At night, when you turn on your lights now, it will automatically diminish the impact of that blue light. So this is what we are trying to do now. We have started, where it is all of these vehicles now we're trying to, because as soon as you turn on the blue light, especially if you're behind, it has been brought to my attention by a number of persons. So I am aware of it, Chair, but again, so it is not the light itself. It is, what we're doing is trying to connect it to the park itself. So as soon as you turn on the lights at night, it will diminish the blue light. Yes.
Thank you very much. Member Dionne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I just want to bring it back a little bit to the fact that you all mentioned that most of the releases for this year that for 2018-2019 that you all have received have went towards paying outstanding debts from 2017-2018, right? At this point, what is the total figure of that outstanding debt for 2017-2018?
$47 million.
$47 million.
So we're supposed to be getting a check, hopefully, for $47 million, and that will just basically assist us to stop, to deal with the bills from up until September 2018.
Right. So when you all receive that $47 million, when would you expect to receive another release to handle the expenses for 2018-2019?
Well, the request is already there, so hopefully as soon as the Ministry of Finance they will have the capability and the approval to provide it for us, because it means that from September 2018, we have everyone that is actually, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is working with our hands open and just asking for charity, basically, because we are involved in a situation where goods and services are being provided to us without persons being paid.
Are you in a position to say what is the value of the second release after the $47 million?
You mean for 2018 to 2019?
Yes.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What is the amount of the release for 2018-2019 after the 47 million is taken care of?
The amount of the release, we would normally request releases on a monthly basis. So we will do our projections and we communicate with the budget division who would indicate to us how much releases we will be getting for that particular month. So in terms of the amount of releases that we will be getting, we really cannot say that right now. It depends on the Ministry of Finance, but we will submit our requests as per normal.
Okay. Now I'm looking at the submission, the allocation under the Infrastructure Development Fund, yes. Subhead 64, under subhead 004-12.
Yes.
The construction of the police stations. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to get an update on how far are we in terms of completing these police stations, in particular the ones in Tobago.
So, Madam Chair and the committee, the Sherburne Road Police Station has been completed and was opened in March. And the Roxborough Police Station, UDCOT is expecting to complete that by June 2019.
And what about the others?
Those are the only two stations earmarked for Tobago at this time.
No, the others for Trinidad.
Oh, we don't have any earmark for Trinidad right now. We've put some projects on hold to be able to engage UDCOT and manage our expenditure. So those that have been earmarked for Trinidad are on hold until we get into further discussions with UDCOT.
You all have an idea when those discussions would commence?
We engage UDCOT on a monthly basis.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to go to page 30 of your submission, where you said that there is no TTPS documented process for recording, tracking, and responding to all allegations or suspicions of fraud. Everything is done in accordance with the relevant laws and regulations. Now, can you explain exactly why we do not have a documented process for recording, tracking, and responding to all allegations of fraud and suspicions of fraud?
Well, we do have a fraud unit. So if at any time that there is something that specific unit will be able to have that information database with them. But is there anything in particular that you have a concern with?
No, it's just, what is the process? Is it documented?
Yes, I'll have to rectify this, because there's through the fraud squad, obviously it would be documented, it would be recorded, and it would be databased, and not just through the fraud squad, but there are several other agencies from the OCIU, the CID, the Special Branch, the FIB, ACIB. So there'll be a number of different. So I do apologize. I think that was inaccurate.
That is very comforting, yes. Because we were very worried when we saw that. Thank you, Chair. That's it for now.
May I follow up on Senator Deonorine's last submission? Just like the chair who had proposed for the Commissioner of Police consideration the formulation of a conflict of interest policy, it is standard practice in all organizations that has proper internal controls and systems. And I have no doubt that you in the police service would have that. But there appears to be a lacuna in the system. And I would like the police service to consider the formulation and operationalization of a formal fraud policy. I think that is very critical for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. You have a manual, just as we have a manual that you're proposing for conflict of interest, have a manual on fraud for the police service of Trinidad and Tobago. I put that out for your consideration, and I hope that you will take it in the good faith that is being suggested. The other point I'd like to raise, I, as a member of this committee, was laboring under the false assumption that the police service, with the amendments to the law of 2007, had been given full autonomy for its operations. That is why the police service was given its own budget. That is why the Commissioner of Police was made the accounting officer and not the permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security. So I am a bit shocked and surprised to hear from the Commissioner of Police today that the construction of police stations is completely outside the remit of the police commissioner. And therefore the police commissioner and the TTPS is literally standing by and having police stations constructed, police station located, by who? That is totally amazing. And I would like you to share with this committee, because I am going to make a recommendation as a member of this committee to this committee here to go to the Parliament on this matter. So I'm asking just for clarification, who or what is responsible for locating and constructing police stations in Trinidad and Tobago that the police service of Trinidad and Tobago and the police commissioner simply has to accept? He has no say on this whole process. Could you share with this committee which agency is responsible for that in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, sir. Well, two points. The first one, yes, we appreciate the recommendation with the fraud policy, and we would actually look into it as you had recommended. The second, the organization that has the sole authority and the decision-making process in the selection, the location, the number, the requirement, the contractor, the furniture, the fittings, everything is UDICOT.
Thank you very, very much, Commissioner, for that information. Thank you very much. I would like to also ask the following. I have seen, and if you can travel with me or journey with me to page 7, 8, and 9 of your submission. I have seen, as a member of this committee, almost about 19 police stations and units costing the taxpayers on a rental basis, a monthly rental basis, of $2.1 million, which adds up to close to $24 million a year. I check it over a 5-year period, $120 million. Now, could you provide us in writing who are the landlords of these various police stations? And I would like to ask what steps have been taken by the police service to reduce this amount of rentals on a monthly basis. What steps are being taken Or am I being told or would be told that is a Udicot matter and the police service has nothing to do with the rental of property? Could you clear the air for us on this?
Just 1 minute, please, Commissioner. Member Mark, I think, and the difficulty maybe is that, again, these appendices are not numbered.
Okay.
But I do think we have been given something for the Trinidad and Tobago Police rental of properties. And maybe the head of finance will confirm that we have been given a matrix. I mean, the numbers don't add up, but in terms of the property names, can you confirm that?
No, all I'm seeing here. Okay, yes, apparently there's something here. All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yeah, but I would still like to get some clarification on this question as it relates to what steps can we take to assist the police service in getting off this lease rental track and getting into a state-owned arrangement where you can have more security.
Well, again, put into the reduction of costs, what we are seeing here, you're correct, $2 million per month rental of all of these. Now, there are two things that we are doing. By the restructuring of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you would have seen that several of these units, by them being in a different building, a different environment. If, for example, there's a kidnapping, the AKU, the CID, the Special Branch, the SWAT, all of these units are all in separate buildings, separate locations, and obviously it makes it ineffective and very difficult for us to deal with a response of a kidnapping in real time. And the reason why I'm dealing with the operational aspect and then the financial aspect is that for the last 28 years, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we do not have a police headquarters, which I think has been totally unacceptable. We have a police admin building. In 1990, that was the last that we had a police headquarters. So because of the loss after the attempted coup, we have many of these organizations, very specific, elite, important units dealing with critical elements that deal with major homicides, gang-related activity, terrorism, kidnappings, and they work separate and in silos. The importance of us having an established Trinidad and Tobago Police Service headquarters, that alone would speak for itself. From the concept of finance, by the construction of a police service headquarters, the cost of this will be greatly reduced because now you can actually have an amalgamation of all of these different units in one specific building. You can look at one police plaza in NYPD and other areas where you have all of these elite units under one umbrella in one building with a proper operational command center. This will ensure real-time information being fed, sharing of information, better collaboration between the units. Likewise with the white-collar crime unit / the financial investigative department that is also being formulated. The ACIB, the FIB, the cybercrime, and the fraud unit, they've all scattered, all in different departments, different buildings. They must all be under one umbrella to ensure that information can be shared, because at times we have discovered where one person is being investigated by fraud, the same individual was being investigated by ACIB and neither the unit knew. So by having the construction of a police service headquarters, it will firstly ensure these units no longer work in silos, but also it will greatly reduce the cost of the number of these buildings now being operated in a specific place and with astronomical rent.
Is that a view that is being expressed with the appropriate authorities to have a properly constructed police headquarters in the Republic of TNT along the lines that you have articulated?
Yes, sir. We have done all of the work and the research. We are just trying to complete it. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, it will be submitted to the Minister of National Security based on that recommendation, where it is important that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we must have a police service headquarters.
All right. I just would like to also find out from the Commissioner of Police. We talk about transformation we talk about restructuring. I think you mentioned re-engineering at one time. Can you tell us where those components or elements are going to be located in the context of a broader framework? For example, let me just be more direct. Does the police service at this time have a 7 or 10-year strategic plan? Do you have a strategic plan in the police service at this time? Some people have it for 5 years. Some people have it for 10 years, as the case may be. Do you have a strategic plan?
The strategic plan, so we have 2018 to 2021.
So you go a
Yes.
3
With and roles, yes. Yes, sir.
All right, cool. And your strategic plan in the context of the manpower audit, in terms of the restructuring that you talked about, in terms of the re-engineering and the transformation, all of those elements are housed in that overall strategic plan? Or is it being silos?
No, sir. That all of the things that we have, most of the things we have discussed today, most of the things that we have seen over the last few months, it is not in the strategic plan. There's been a change in the Commissioner of Police. So with that, there's going to be a restructuring in the strategic plan as well.
So are you saying that, for instance, we can expect a new strategic plan, and do you have any possible time frame when you may want to roll out such a plan so that the country as a whole would know in perspective where the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is going over the next 3 to 5 years? Do you have a time frame for that consideration?
Yes, the Police Service Commission, in fact, I have been liaising with them. They have actually asked me this very same question. They have given me a timeline. So I think in the next few months, that would be completed. It will be submitted to the Police Service Commission, and then it will then be forwarded for the public consumption.
All right. Now, the other area I wanted to clarify with you has to do with what you have described as drug testing for the police service. And I wanted to ask, in that particular context, have you been able to identify, or put it another way, how many officers have been subjected to drug testing thus far, as we speak?
No, yes, sir. There is a requirement that gives the Commissioner of Police that authority to have random drug testing. The answer over the last few years, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I think the number is 0.
0. So is there any time frame that, given the fact that the Commissioner of Police, that is, has the authority to execute that arrangement, do you have any time frame for effecting that particular matter?
Yes, sir. It has already been passed to all members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that it will commence, well, in 2 months, but I think that was a couple of weeks ago. So I think in the next 6 weeks or so, we will then kick off. The concept of this is not to actually catch police officers. It is hoped that my concept of operation, where it is that I think it's for the first time we are now introducing the use of random drug testing, it is to ensure that police officers are fully aware of their obligation and their responsibility. You cannot adhere to a mandatory requirement to protect and serve with pride if it is at any time you may be perceived to be under the influence of any drug that you may not, especially the fact that you have a very great responsibility. You can actually hold someone against their will. You have a firearm. So all of these things make it almost mandatory that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we should have done this for years. In the private sector, it is done. So it is unfortunate. I do wish to apologize that we have never done this before. It is being done now. But again, I have deliberately given 2 months. It is not to catch anyone, but it is given all individuals the opportunity, if it is you want to call it, to detox them. But all individuals are fully aware now that you have the opportunity, and you need to, if you want to remain as a police officer, you need to ensure that you're a clean police officer.
You also mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, my memory will not fail me at this time, but I remember you, as Commissioner of Police, making the point some time ago that all police officers, or I should say, the majority of them, particularly those in strategic locations throughout Trinidad and Tobago, ought to be subjected to a lie detector test. Is that simultaneously on the same track as the drug test? And when, therefore, will that be rolled out? Can you share with this committee?
The polygraph testing is presently done for all police officers who...
Polygraph.
Yeah, polygraph testing. That is done for all persons who are interested to enter the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I am actually trying to make changes to the polygraph testing. There are certain questions that have caused many. I think it needs to improve, because I think we have lost some good individuals who may have been good police officers based on the questions. It is not going to have an impact on reducing the effectiveness and the professionalism of the police service. But also, apart from those individuals who try to get into the police service with that mandatory polygraph testing, there are also elite units in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, such as the Special Branch, the Special Operation Response Team, and the other units I'm also making it mandatory as well, such as MOPS, the Organized Crime Intelligence Unit. So there are specific units that we cannot afford for any officer to compromise the situation. The polygraph test, Chair, may I add, is not an avenue to confirm guilt. It is to ensure innocence. So that is what it is. So this is not an agenda that is earmarked to point fingers at anyone or to label anyone, but it is an avenue that is used worldwide for specific elite units to ensure that it can reduce or greatly minimize the possibility of an operation being compromised. As it pertains to the Southwest Peninsula, that is being done because we need to ensure that our borders are locked, it is secure. And if it is that there's a perception that individuals may compromise our security, the question that is being asked is, for every different unit or department, the questions will be different. So to enter the special branch will be a different line of questioning for the polygraph testing to being stationed at the Southwest Peninsula. The Southwest Peninsula, it is one specific question. Do you get remuneration or do you benefit from illegal drugs and weapons entering the country illegally? And it is as simple as that. Individuals have the right to refuse. If it is that they fail, it is not a case of disciplinary action, but all individuals that will be stationed in the Southwestern Peninsula, Icacos, Cedros, Point Fortin, the task force in the Southwestern Peninsula, you must adhere to that obligation, take the test, and ensure that you're successful.
Two final questions. Madam Chair, you may probably guide me on this one. I don't know if there is an appendix that deals with the vehicles that are purchased by the TTPS and the companies that they purchase these vehicles from, and the value of those vehicles, let's say on an annual basis or every 2 years, as the case may be. Is there such an appendix?
The document didn't ask for that as a direct question.
No, well, I'm asking.
But you can get that.
Is it possible?
We have that updated every time we purchase a vehicle.
You can supply that for us in writing.
Correct.
May I also ask, as a final, because we could have the commissioner until about 7, but we wouldn't keep you that late. Commissioner of Police, may I ask the following question? We know that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is charged with 3 essential functions: maintenance of law and order, prevention and detection of crime, and the prosecution of offenders. I want to deal with prevention and detection of crime, and I'm not going into any crime discussion, Madam Chair. Just a simple question. We know that DNA evidence has made a significant contribution to criminal investigations in many countries. We have a law in Trinidad and Tobago that deals with DNA evidence or DNA legislation or matters. Can you share with this committee, as police commissioner, what efforts is the police service making to ensure that this important tool that can be used by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to deal with evidence that is so critical, as you said, as opposed to intelligence? What steps, what efforts are being made to ensure that this particular institution and operation gets going? Because I saw in your submission where you talk about this taking of swab, as the case may be, as one of your training programs. So could you share with us briefly what is being done in that area? Because I believe, Commissioner of Police, that institution, once properly established and operationalized, can go a long way in dealing with this matter, seriously speaking. So can you share with us?
Most definitely, sir. And again, as I mentioned, it is not just DNA testing. The all aspects of crime scene investigation, forensic testing, DNA testing, dealing with cybercrime, fraud. There are specific units in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service we have to improve. We have very good police officers, and they are doing their best. But at times, they have been very limited because of the limitation in training and the type of technology and improvement in what is provided for us internationally. So to answer your question, so it first has to do with the improvement in training, which is why I spoke about the unacceptable allocation for training for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The DNA testing training alone for several officers to travel to North America or Europe for improvement in understanding how to deal with DNA testing, that will cover that budget immediately, or what is given to the police service. So if it is we really want the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to perform and to excel and to be deemed as Trinidad and Tobago's finest, there must be improvement in the opportunity for training. The second has to do with what happens is that because of the police officers, many of them will come from recruit training, and then they immediately become police officers, or they will operate as officers. Because of the improvement and increase in technology in this type of crime scene investigation, DNA testing, forensic testing, and so forth, you're going to get many other young persons who will be better trained to understand that type of technology, and you're not going to get it from the police officers that have been streamlined into the service, which is why the opportunity for a commissioner of police to appoint persons as SRPs specifically trained in high-end capabilities and that type of unit would assist the police service. So what we are doing is finding specialists to deal and understand DNA testing, forensic testing, fraud, cybersecurity, specialists in those fields outside of the police service to make them SRPs so that they will complement, enhance, and improve the capacity of those units. So that is the second. And the third has to do with our international assistance that we are getting from our allies, more so the United States and the United Kingdom. They are greatly assisting us in showing us what is provided internationally to improve the capability and the capacity for such a unit, sir. So those three, training, bringing in specialists, and international support.
Member Duki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, is the random drug testing intervention, would that be incorporated into the recruiting process as well?
No, but that is already part of the process into the recruiting. But what happens, just like the polygraph testing, everyone is willing to be polygraphed as a recruit. After several years, you feel that you're no longer obligated. You're willing to be drug tested for anything as a recruit to get into the service, and now there will be concerns. My point is the same responsibility, professionalism, loyalty, and dedication you wanted to become a police officer, you must have that throughout your police service.
And also, is performance a real influence on promotion and progression within the service?
Yes, so I am actually reviewing the performance evaluation. I am not too pleased with what we have seen.
I'll stop you for 1 minute. As opposed to seniority.
Yeah. There's a merit list. Now, how the merit list is constructed, there's obviously, it goes with two things. It has its seniority, and again, you have the exams. But performance appraisal, it has to be, we are now looking at different techniques to improve it. For example, recently, 82 persons, I think it was the inspector, and all 82 persons, you have 25 points. And 81 out of the 82 persons got 25 out of 25 in their performance appraisal. So it meant that everybody was perfect. Everybody did their job. There was absolutely no one that was better than the other. That thing is totally inappropriate. It even had an individual who refused to act in the capacity of the position where he was then applying for in a substantive post, but he was given 25 out of 25. So the concept for the performance evaluation, performance appraisal, has to be amended. The exams and the structure that we have in our promotion board, it is very good. It is among the best that you can find. Yes, you would have the seniority, but the performance appraisal of how that officer has conducted him or herself as an officer on a regular basis, it is going to be altered very soon. I'll give you examples. We have police officers, based on reports that you will get from PC on individuals, based on him being absent for carnival duties, based on him abusing his privilege by using a siren. This must all be part of your performance appraisal to ascertain whether you should be promoted. It has not been taken into consideration, so reports that persons will send to our police officers being investigated, it must play its part. It cannot be that all of this will take place and you get 25 out of 25. When this happens, it gives the officer the impression that how I act is irrelevant. All that is important is my seniority and that I come first in the exam. So the performance appraisal evaluation must be, it is being amended to ensure just that, sir.
Finally, Mr. Commissioner, the person specification of a police officer, let's say 10 years ago, has there been any significant change to what is required now?
You mean the basic requirements to be a police officer?
Yeah. Has there been, and I'm saying, actually, in the context of, I'm making an assumption that the police officer of today, or maybe in the next 5 years, may need to have new skills and competencies, given the demands of the environment. So has there been any change in terms of the specifications of yesteryear as opposed to what you may need now going forward into the future? Because you made reference to specialists, and I mean, you mentioned how you can attract those, but in terms of the generalists, is there any significant change, and even if not now, that you may foresee in the near future?
Yes, sir, that's an excellent question, and the answer is no. There's still there's the basic minimum requirement, the 5 O-level passes, the polygraph testing, the medical, the background check, and the exams, and then the best persons that will complete all of that will go into the next batch of 95 or whatever. Just to let you know, we are looking to double that capacity to ensure that we have at least a batch of 250 twice per annum. So that by that, it will ensure that we reach our establishment, which we have never done because we are just bringing in batches of 180 recruits, but 150 leave every year. So that's where we are always short. But again, going back to your point, that is definitely what is required, because by not doing that, it has forced me to use my SRP card to have to bring in the experts in those fields, because those matters have not been dealt with. So it is, but so at this time, what I can do is to utilize the expertise of individuals in those elite units and fields coming in as SRPs.
I just want to remind us here, we do have a Joint Select Committee on National Security, and therefore to remind us that our remit here is really looking at expenditure and internal controls. And while I know once we get the Commissioner of Police, we want to engage him in all aspects of policing, I just want to caution members, I've allowed us some latitude, but really if we could stay within our ambit of our mandate. So Member Duki, if you have something that you'd like to ask within the expenditure and internal controls, I'll allow it.
Again, going back to your question, so that to bring us back to this, it requires a difference in budget allocation, because again, when it is we are bringing in specialists now, which was not done before, but again, going back to Member Mark, when it is that you spoke so about the improvement of the fraud squad and DNA, to bring in specialists, at times you need to put their persons, because the opportunity out there in that specific field, it is very high. The salary is high. So at times you might not be able to get that specialist based on the salary that you will get as a police constable. So there would be situations where we need to ensure that you have those highly trained, highly qualified persons in those specific fields. And by doing that now, to enhance that, there would be an increase in budget requirement.
Member Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some short questions, and I assure it's related to our submission. Commissioner, but just to follow up on Member Duki, just with regards to the training, there is a belief out there that this 6 months training that police officers currently undergo is insufficient to have them, out there dealing with the public. Do you share that?
Just 1 minute. Remind me how that comes.
Because it may have
expenditure and internal controls. So you want to know what the impact would be on the budget if
the training is extended.
Oh.
Yes, madam.
Yes, Chairman. The 6 months is something that, looking at, again, we try to look at different countries, look at the style, the pattern. The 6 months, it is very appropriate. What happens after, for the next 2 years, we monitor their performance to ensure that the officer is adhering to his or her obligation as a police officer, where they would be looking at them. They will have senior officers monitoring them whilst they're on patrols. So I don't
like
say
a probation period.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes. So that probation period would provide us with that opportunity.
All right.
I'm sure the long and short of it is that it will have an impact on the budget.
Of course.
Okay.
Commissioner,
all right. So just again, to bring us back, we've had the commissioner and his team here for a little over 3 hours, and I would really like to release the commissioner and his team to do some policing. But
sorry, yeah, okay. No, just one. So, Commissioner, just one last question here with regards to, and this is the budget allocation, current transfers and subsidies. If I could draw your attention to item 007 households and item 02. And the line item there is, I take it that is compensation to the estates of members of the protective services. Are we on the...
Sorry, sir, what's the question?
Okay, so are we on the same line? Yes. Okay, so the question really is, I just wanted clarification. Does that refer to the compensation that goes to the estates of deceased police officers?
No, there's another vote for that the House...
Would you please repeat the question, sir?
No, I'm asking whether that line item, compensation to the estates of members of the protective, well, that's what it states here, is related to the compensation is given to the estates of deceased and the family of deceased police officers.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir.
Yes, sir.
So if we just follow the line item, I see that there's a shortage, an allocation, a shortage of $1 million. Because I see that the total required is $2 million, and we are $1 million short. The question, the same line?
Yeah.
That's not households.
It's under households, yeah. Current transfers and subsidies 04, 007, 02.
Just trying to find it on the documents.
Yeah.
1 minute.
Excuse me, households or house rates?
No, households.
Because house rates is on 7.
No, households.
Oh,
it's
that's
households.
Okay.
Yeah. It's page, what page is it? Page 3? It will be the third sheet of the statement of expenditure.
Well, one check, I do recall one check of $1 million was actually given to the wife of one of the deceased police officers just a few weeks ago by myself.
I'm seeing a deficit of $1 million. Does that mean that is an outstanding payment.
It may very well be that there's a second person, and we still have to go through that process for the payment for that officer, for the spouse of that officer, sir.
Yeah. Can you just explain briefly what the process involves and how quickly it takes place?
Well, I know the payment for that comes from the Ministry of National. Yes, please.
Yes, with respect to household 01, that's ex gratia award. That is a compensation that is...
No, sorry, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about 02.
The process for the...
Maybe you
made
can,
one payment and there's
maybe
nothing
you can
outstanding.
submit. Yeah, maybe you can submit in writing. You can tell us in writing the process.
Yeah, I will submit it with the processor. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner, as you see, this committee could most probably keep you and your team here for the rest of the week, but I do have to be humane, and therefore I really want to bring this public hearing to a close at this stage. It is 5:45. There are some other questions that we would like to ask, and we'll send it to you in writing. The Secretariat will communicate the questions and the time frame, and there are certain other undertakings that were given here, of which they would remind you. I want to take this opportunity to invite you, if you want to make any closing comments. You can decline, but if you wish, and then we will bring this public hearing to a close. Okay, so I want to thank the Commissioner of Police, his team, the Head of Administration, Mr. Ramroop, Head of Finance, Ms. Hart, the Director of Human Resource, Mr. Raghunanan, the Acting Deputy Commissioner, Ms. Christopher, Mrs. Gomez Andrews, who is planning research implementation, Mr. Bossier, internal audit, Mr. Badalu, ICT. I want to thank you all for a very engaging conversation, and look forward to further conversations with respect to the development of the initiatives in the TTPS. I want to thank the members of the media who stayed with us. I also want to thank the members of the public who followed us, who sent in questions to assist in this inquiry. I therefore want to thank you all, wish you all a safe journey home and back to your respective duties. I now bring this public hearing to an end. This meeting is now suspended. I thank you very much.